jointly organized by the Bureau of Energy, Ministry of Economic Affairs, and British Office in order to facilitate exchange of ideas in the renewable energy sector. Today's meeting will be co-chaired by Mr. Cheng-Wei, Director General of the Bureau of Energy, Ministry of Economic Affairs. Director General, could you please wave to our audience? Thank you. And the other co-chair of today's roundtable meeting is Mr. Huub de Rooyen, Managing Director of Marine at the Crown Estate. Mr. de Rooyen, could you please also wave to our audience? Thank you. Welcome, Mr. de Rooyen. Yes, good to have you here. To kick off today's meeting, first of all, we would like to invite Mr. Wen Shenzhen, Deputy Minister of Economic Affairs, for his opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Deputy Minister Zhen, please. Deputy Minister, you may have the floor, please.
好，我们副局长，还有邓代表、尤局长，还有各位代表、各位女士、各位先生，大家午安。我今天很高兴能够来参加第16届的台英再生能源的论坛。那今天的交流会议，我想我们会有很多具体的问题可以讨论。那我相信，在这个时候，大家最关心的一定就是台湾再生能源的发展，在下一个阶段，我们的具体的一些政策内容是什么？首先要跟大家说明是，其实全世界再生能源的一些装置的进展，多多少少都受到了 COVID-19 的影响。那在台湾也是一样受到了一些影响。我们在离岸风电的部分，去年到今年的一些进度有受到一些影响。不过，我们依然在今年提出了下一个阶段，台湾的离岸风电发展的整个政策的规划，已经在8月份正式对外做了一个公告。那这一个公告，我想大家一定都非常的关心。你要翻译还是不需要？我直接讲下去。好，那我相信在这一个公布的这个第3阶段的开发里面，台湾是希望提出一个比过去的发展速度再增加一些。好，因为过去我们从2016年上开始陆续规划，到2018签完行政契约，2020陆续并网，到2025我们的整个规模大概是5.6个 gigawatt 的离岸风电。In average， 我们大概每年要装置1个 gigawatt， 但在接下来的速度上面，我们希望再生能源在离岸风电上的推动速度能够更加快，所以我们规划了一个2年加总起来大概3个 gigawatt， 就平均1年 1.5个 gigawatt， 也就是比现在的斜率增加 50% 的一个装置速度。这是我们的企图，我们希望能够在离岸风电的发展上面速度能够更加快。那在这个加快的同时，我们需要更多国际上的合作伙伴，也需要更多我们本土自己打造出来的我们未来有潜力的团队，一起投入这个离岸风电的建设。那这需要跟大家一起来努力合作。我们也会有很多的问题需要共同克服。那过去台湾跟英国在再生能源这个领域上面进行了很多官方的意见交流与合作。那我们在最近几年看到更可喜的是，有非常多民间企业已经逐步的在进行合作，包含今天在这个场合也会有我们和厂商的合作的一个 MOU 签署。那我们希望台湾跟英国在再生能源的这个方面的合作，能够有更多
cooperation. Taiwan and the UK can work together for a longer time. So, on behalf of the Ministry of Economic Affairs, I wish a great success to the meeting today. Thank you all.
Minister, for your remarks, and thank you for giving us an update on the zonal development for offshore wind power in Taiwan. And next, please welcome Mr. John Dennis, representative of British Office, for his opening remarks. Mr. John Dennis, please.
Vice Minister Tsang, Director General Yu, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you all. And thank you for joining the 16th UK-Taiwan Renewable Roundtable. We're co-hosting today's event with the Bureau of Energy from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, who I kindly thank for their help and their attendance this afternoon. I'd also like to thank ITRI's Green Energy and Environment Research Laboratories, who we also work closely with in delivering today's event. The UK is leading the world in clean growth. In less than 20 years, the UK has developed the largest offshore wind sector in the world. It powered 39% of UK homes in 2020. And in our hubs like Teesside, Lowestoft and Hull, we have replaced polluting jobs with clean ones. Similarly, we want to help Taiwan turbocharge its own offshore wind sector and become the regional leader in clean growth. With just 2 months now until the COP26 Global Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, we have a renewed drive to help Taiwan in its energy transition. Offshore wind is becoming cheaper and more economically compelling with every year that passes. In 2011, for example, it took North Sea engineers 60 days to install each and every turbine. In 2017, just 6 years later, it took around 14 hours. And now they can install one of those turbines in just 8 hours. That kind of growth and cost saving wouldn't have been possible without government investment in technologies to support developers in bringing more green energy into our grid system. The UK offshore wind sector has set a target to reach 40 gigawatts to our grid by 2030. And I would like to congratulate the Bureau of Energy and the Ministry of Economic Affairs on their recently announced third round offshore wind development plan and their own target to 20.5 gigawatts in capacity by 2035. This really helps establish Taiwan as the leading offshore wind market in the Asia Pacific. It also helps build a strong pipeline here in Taiwan, helping to encourage companies to make long-term commitments. In the British office, we began working with Taiwan on offshore wind way back in 2004. We shared the UK's experience in energy policy, in industrial development and R&D. And now, Taiwan is the UK's largest offshore wind market in Asia. The UK's credit agency, UK Export Finance, has provided more than £500 million in credit guarantees to 3 offshore wind farms in Taiwan. And we now have 30 British offshore wind companies with their own offices here. And they're all working with key stakeholders throughout Taiwan's offshore wind supply chain. We worked with the British Chamber of Commerce in Taipei to set up the UK Renewable Committee as a platform for collaborating across the supply chain of renewables between the UK and Taiwan. And I'm glad to say many of its members are joining the event today. The committee recently launched its summer internship scheme, helping Taiwanese graduates explore careers in the industry through British companies. And we also recently held our annual UK-Taiwan Energy Dialogue, deepening our cooperation on carbon reduction pathways. The UK's Offshore Renewable Catapult and ITRI signed an MOU on offshore wind innovation and information exchange, supporting the development of Taiwan's renewable energy sector. And we also have helped facilitate an MOU between the UK's and Taiwan's labour safety regulators on offshore wind personnel. That's quite a list of things. I cite them all because we feel these examples really demonstrate the UK's commitment to supporting Taiwan in its energy transition. Now, for today, we have 18 speakers from both Taiwan and the UK who've come to share their experience in offshore wind operation and maintenance in smart grid technology and floating wind. I'm also delighted to announce an MOU between CSBC, the largest shipbuilder in Taiwan, and Flotation Energy, a UK floating wind developer. The two organisations will collaborate on floating wind development here in Taiwan, a really important future sector within the industry. We hope many other successful partnerships will come into fruition following today's discussions. Finally, I would like to thank you all, both here and online, for coming this afternoon. I'd like to thank our tremendous team at the British office, led by Lin Lee, and their equally brilliant collaborators in the Bureau of Energy and the Ministry of Economic Affairs, for producing together this tremendous event. I know it's going to be very successful, and I wish it well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis, for your remarks. We look forward to more collaboration between UK and Taiwan. We would now like to invite our guests on site to join us for a group photo. So please move towards the event backdrop over there. Deputy Minister Zhen, Mr. Dennis, Mr. Yo, and Ms. Ashmore, please do join us at the event backdrop here. We would also like to invite all the other guests on site to please move towards our event backdrop over there, as we're going to take a group photo over there in front of the event backdrop. And for our guests joining us online, please turn on your web camera, because later on we're going to have a virtual group photo together. So we would like to invite all guests to join us for the group photo. And please move towards the center a little bit for this group photo. All right, so we're going to take like 2 rounds. So first, please look at our photographer in the middle right here. Thank you. Please look at the photographer in the middle. Thank you. And a big smile, although it's under the mask. But we can see you're smiling under the face mask. All right, thank you so much. Let's have a thumbs up for the photo. Thumbs up. Okay, and now for our guests online, please look into your camera, because we're going to Photoshop and have a virtual group photo. So please look into your camera as we have our group photo on site. Thank you. Our guests online, would you please also give us a thumbs up for the group photo? Yes, thumbs up. All right. All right. Thank you so much. Yes, okay, good. Thank you so much. Please return to your seat. Thank you. Thank you very much. As mentioned earlier by Deputy Minister and also by Mr. John Dennis, this roundtable meeting has been a very important platform for us to exchange ideas and explore opportunities for collaboration. And the MOU on floating wind turbine between CSBC and Flotation Energy is a testament to deepen collaboration in the renewable energy sector. Before we move on to the MOU signing ceremony, we would first like to invite the representative from CSBC and Flotation Energy to say a few words. First of all, we would like to invite Chairman Wenlong Zheng from CSBC Corporation Taiwan to say a few words.
Okay,
Chairman Zheng, please.
Thank you. Dear John Dennis, the representative from British office, Mr. Yu, and also Mr. Logan, Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my great honor to give keynote with Lord Stephen, CEO of Flotation Energy, in this MOU signing ceremony. As we all know, in the past few years, floating wind turbine is a brand new field in the international offshore wind power market. And most floaters of the existing pre-commercial offshore wind farm were built in the dock of shipyard. Since the floater and the ship are with the same similar characteristics, it will be a favorable new attempt for CSBC. We have a very big shipyard in Taiwan. The dock of CSBC have been incubated many surprising and significant ships for the past years. We therefore look forward to build floaters of offshore wind turbine from our dock in the near future. This will set a new world milestone for Taiwan's offshore wind development, and will also write a new page for Taiwan industrial innovation through this collaboration with famous company of flotation energy from UK. We hope so. I'm very glad that all the distinguished guests, whether online or on site, can make your time to join and witness this signing ceremony of the MOU. Finally, I sincerely offer my warmest regards and thanks again, and I wish all the distinguished guests good health and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Cheng. Thank you. And next, we would like to invite Lord Stephen, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Flotation Energy, to say a few words. Lord Stephen is joining us online today. Lord Stephen, the floor is yours. Lord Stephen, could you please unmute the microphone?
I hope this works.
Yes.
Deputy Minister, Director, honoured guests, it's a great privilege and I'm very delighted to be able to participate in this signing ceremony today. I was in Taiwan just before lockdown, and I would very much like to be in Taiwan today to put my own signature on the Memorandum of Understanding. It represents a very major step forward. It's an important week for me because our turbines at the Scottish floating project called Kincardine, the Kincardine offshore wind farm, they are now all operational, and we can officially say that we have the largest floating wind project in the world. But my ambition is to build an even bigger test and demonstration project in Taiwan. And if we could do that near Hsinchu City, there are good conditions there. There is the right water depth, and we believe it's essential that we work with the local supply chain and that we build those floating foundations in Taiwan and with CSBC. So this is an exciting first step forward in Taiwan, and if we can get it right, not only will it lead to more projects, floating projects in Taiwan, but also Taiwan can be a foundation, a launch pad for the rest of Asia, and we can be doing great things together. And I'll stop there. I need to be brief, but can I finish with an invitation to any and all of you to come over the next months and years when we can all travel again to look at the Kincardine turbines. They are one of the wonders of the modern world, 194 meters high, floating here in Scotland in the North Sea. So I would be delighted to welcome you. It doesn't have to be immediately, because we hope they'll be there for at least the next 30 years. So take your time, but perhaps within those next 3 or 4 years, we can make plans and deliver an exciting new project for floating wind in Taiwan also. Thank you very much indeed. It's a great pleasure to participate in this afternoon's event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Stephen, for your remarks on behalf of Flotation Energy. And in fact, today, Director of Asia and Australia at Flotation Energy, Mr. Tim Sawyer, is also joining us online today. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to visiting Concordant Turbine in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will proceed to the MOU signing ceremony. We would like to invite our 2 signatories to please take your seats at the MOU signing table. Please welcome Mr. Cheng-Wei, President of CSBC Corporation Taiwan, and Mr. Reggie Wu, General Manager of Taiwan of Flotation Energy. Please take your seats at the MOU signing table. And we would like to invite the 3 witnesses to join us here at the MOU signing table. Director General Mr. Yo, and Mr. John Dennis, and Mr. Wen-Long Zheng, Chairman Zheng. Please join us at the MOU signing table to witness the signing of this MOU. So this MOU indeed marks a significant milestone between the collaboration between Taiwan and the UK in the energy sector. Whenever you are ready. All right, so Mr. Wei, Mr. Wu, please sign the MOU for us. Thank you. Thank you. Please exchange the MOU and sign the other copy for us. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we would like to take a photo with the signed MOU. So could you please present the MOU, and we're going to take a group photo. Joining us online for this group photo are Mr. Tim Sawyer, Mr. Huub de Rooyen, and Lord Stephen. Please look into your camera. Please look at our photographer here. Thank you. All right. More photos. Just a second. Okay, and we also have our guest joining us for this virtual group photo. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for the conclusion of the MOU, and we look forward to more collaboration between UK and Taiwan in the renewable energy sector. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Thank you. Thank you very much. We will now proceed to the roundtable meeting today. In today's roundtable meeting, we are going to discuss 3 topics, including the latest offshore wind development update from Taiwan and the UK, how the UK offshore wind industry works with Taiwan to set up operation and maintenance, as well as smart grid and floating wind. And the 3 sessions today will be co-chaired by Director General Cheng-Wei from the Bureau of Energy, Ministry of Economic Affairs, as well as Mr. Huub de Rooyen, Managing Director of Marine at the Crown Estate. Without further ado, we will now proceed to the first session, where we are going to share the latest offshore wind development update from Taiwan and the UK. I will now hand the floor to our co-chair, Mr. Yo, to introduce the speaker from Taiwan first, followed by Mr. Huub de Rooyen's presentation. Mr. Yo, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. First, I'm really happy to see the MOU signed by CSBC and Flotation Energy. And till now, Taiwan and the UK has been cooperating for over 15 years and holding this roundtable meeting every year as a platform of regular information exchange. In the recent years, we all know that Taiwan has been focusing on the development of offshore wind, and during these years, the UK has been our important partner. I'm glad that both sides can share our progress and exchange more information today. First of all, I would like to invite Dr. Cheng, who is the Director of Energy Technology Division of BOE, to give us a presentation on the development and the prospect of offshore wind energy in Taiwan. Dr. Cheng.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good morning from our UK partner, and good morning for our Taiwan side partners. I want to update some offshore energy policy in Taiwan. Next, please. My presentation outline will separate into the 5 parts. First will be about the potential. The second part is about strategy. And the other one is about phase 1, the result of phase 1 and phase 2. Finally, I will be update some also called runner development, some information for all of you. Next, please. For this slide, we can see that for the water depths below to the 50 meters means that we have over 10 giga for the shallow waters. But for the we so-called deeper water means that the water depth higher than the 50 meters. I think in Taiwan we have over the 10 giga. I think for the potential will be about the 90 giga, but I think the feasibility is about 20 or 30 giga for the potential. So the Taiwan we have some potential to develop for the offshore wind energies. Next slide, please. For this slide, I think that for the year of 2012, we have the 3 phases. For the phase 1, in the year of 2012, we have the demo programs. I think for the 2 demo projects, first will be commissioned in the year of 2019 for the Formosa 1. The second, I think that all the 21 turbines have grid connection just this Friday. They have all the grid connection in the last Friday, the Taipei project. So for the demo stage, we have a successful experience for the phase 1. For the second phase, the learning for the potential, I think we just have the good some result. But the selection will be 3.8 giga. This means that all the project will be used the feed-in tariff to support for the project. The other one is about 1.7 giga is by the selection. So the total will be the 5.5 giga will be commissioned in the year of 2025. So we will talk about the second phase, we so-called rural development. I think originally we just announced 1 giga per year, but the final version will be we will be increase our capacity into the 1.5 giga. And by the way, we also have the we so-called side plan directions, just announced in July. So we announced some the site. Maybe some sites is more sensitive. So just announced in July, and finalized. We so-called game rule mechanism is just announced in August. So we will use the 2-stage solution. One is about the capability review. The second is the price bidding process. By the way, we also including the we so-called industrial relevance plan to our game rules in the second phase. Next slide, please. For the phase 1, we so-called demo incentive program. Just mentioned for the we have a successful experience for the Formosa 1 and the Taipei demo project. So all the project will be commissioned in the year of 2021. Next slide. So I think I'll talk about the second phase, we so-called the runner of the potential. I just mentioned for the selection will be 3.8 giga. They will commission before the year of 2024. And by auction will be the 1.6. They will commission in year of 2025. So the total will be, I think the target for the year of 2025, total will be about 5.5 giga in that time. Next, we talk about more detailed information about runner development, the more detailed information. I think we have the four item, especially for the scheme for the second phase. First will be we enlarge our capacity from the original will be the 1 giga to the 1.5 giga from the year of 2026 to the year of 2035. Means total will be the 50 giga for this period. The second will be we so-called a flexible IRP opinion. I think in the original, the second phase, 100% of the capacity must follow for the IRP, but we have some flexibilities for the mechanism. For the item, we review some item. For the generator, for the cable marine, we just review, we put it into the item, into the bonus item. The second with the quantity of flexibility, just mentioned from the 100% to the 60%. The other, we have the bonus cooperation items. And we have, for the second phase, we use two-stage selection process. One will be the capability review. The second will be a price bidding process. And by the way, I think that they have a different opinion to the BOE, not the cap. I think we use the 500 mega for each wind farm. So for some condition, they can have 100 mega. Maybe the total will be about 600 mega for each wind farm. So I think that is some key scheme for the third phase. Next, I think for the signed review, I think in the originals, all the development must send the document to the 9 government agents to get some 10 documents from the 9 government agencies. So to be more efficient, I think it means if coming up fail, we will hold the so-called joint review meetings. We invite 9 government agents to the meeting, so they can have a different opinion or some opinion for this project. So for the one meeting, they can gather 10 documents for the 9 government agents. So finally, they are agree for the project. Okay, the minute if coming up fail, we'll send the wind farm to the EPA for the EIA procedures. Okay, if maybe they have a different opinion for this wind farm, okay, they can get some more information, more document to the minutes of become a fail. By the way, minutes of coming a fail, we also have the joint meeting to review all the mechanics. So we want to more efficient process. I think the time is important for the all development. If the site can be to have a good result, so use the joint review mechanism is good for all the info. Next, please. So I think this slide shows that we separate into the first 6 years into the 3 rounds. The first round will be for the year of 2026 to the year of 2027. The total will be 3 giga. So we will be I think all the government will be put to the minute coming affair in the next August, so they can have some bidding process for the round 1. But for the round 2, I think the bidding process will be in the year of 2023, and the round 3 will be in the year of 2024. For the second stage, I think they will be open based on the technology or based on some issues. So we will separate into the two stages. The first stage will be separated into the 3 rounds. The first round will be in the next August. Okay, next. I think this is some detailed information about a two-stage selection process. I think we separate into the technology capability. It's about one item. The second item is financial capabilities. So the other item will be the IRP plan. I think just mention that all the item will be the 60% of the capacities, and also have some bonus item. The bonus item must got about 10 points. So if they got the capability review, means that they can go to the so-called bidding process. The bidding process will be the low one can get the right to have the wind farm. And if the same price means that additional industrial plan, means the bonus item will be the same point to decide who will be got it right. Okay, next please. So I think that some people or some developers are concerned about the IRP procedures. I think for the third one, mechanic, we have some more flexibility item. First will be the item, will be the more flexibility. But I think based on the second phase experience, we will review some items like the generator and the submarine cables. We'll put it into the so-called bonus item. The second of the quantity of flexibilities. Original will be the 100%. So we will decrease into the 60%. So they have more flexible item to choose which one. And we also put some bonus item or option items for the cooperation, like some design service for the with our local supply chain, even some component for the turbine items. Okay, next one. I think the outlook for the year of the 2035 for the Taiwan. I think in that time, I think we are about the 20 giga in the year of 2035, and we have got more job creation for the green job. And for the foreign and domestic investment will be about 92 trillion in that time. Okay, this is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chen. Next, I am pleased to invite Herb, who is the Managing Director of Marine at the Crown Estate, and also a really good friend of BOE and Taiwan, to give us a presentation on the road to 2050 offshore wind in the UK. Okay, Mr. Herb, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yoke, and good afternoon, everyone in Taipei and elsewhere when you're also listening on the YouTube channel. It is a great pleasure to be here again on the ever-increasing journey of offshore wind in Taiwan. And even though we are connected by technology, and I also look forward to being there in Taiwan again in the future. And it's great to see many old friends and also see many new faces and see many new names, because that is evidence of a strongly growing industry. I would like to share a few thoughts with you from issues we have encountered in the UK as the market grows. And let's turn to the first slide, please. So this is a map of the seabed around England, Wales and Northern Ireland, which is the part of the sea that we as the Crown Estate are responsible to manage. We are an independent commercial organization. We are set up by an act of Parliament, but we operate independently. We are accountable to UK Parliament. And what you see here is how busy the sea around the UK really is. And I should say that those beautiful floating turbines in Kincardine, they're on the northern edge of the map, and that's that part of the seabed is managed independently by Scottish government. So the message here is the sea is a really busy space. There is offshore wind, there are fishing activities, there are cables, many communication cables, there are power cables, oil and gas pipelines, there are navigation routes, there are clear areas for radar systems, there are also areas for environmental protection, and we have already about 75% of the seabed in the UK has already been designated. So we are in a world, and that is the message here, where the seabed space is very scarce, and we need to really think about how we can deliver growth for offshore wind in such a busy space. And next slide, please. On this slide, you see the what we sometimes call waterfall chart of the capacities in the UK of offshore wind. And there are a few numbers here. So in the year 2000 is when we first started generating wind electricity. And last year, 13% of every electron used in the UK was produced by offshore wind power. So that's just in a span of 20 years. And it's really encouraging to see the ambitious targets of your government, Mr. Yeo, because there is such a strong lead from government has really helped us in the UK to get these high growth numbers. So what you see is there is a lot of capacity in various stages, and there is also a green bar at the right hand, upper right hand. And that green bar is the target that we need to reach in order to decarbonize the UK's economy by 2050. It is based on the advice of an independent committee, the Committee on Climate Change. And what it shows is that not only is there a lot of offshore wind activity already, there is lots more that needs to be done. And when you reflect on there is lots more that needs to be done, yet the seabed space is getting so very busy, it will be clear that there are challenges. And my last slide, so next slide please. Here are 6 points that I want to leave you with. They are challenges that we are encountering in the UK today, where I'm sitting here today in London. There are challenges that we're grappling with as we want to ensure continued growth across the offshore wind sector. And they are, first of all, a clear pipeline of projects with a route to market. It is no good to have great ambition if there isn't a route for these projects to be built and financed. So that is really important. And our round 4, the ScotWind round of Scottish government and future leasing rounds in the UK, they all contribute to that pipeline of projects. The second point is this point on marine spatial planning. And my apologies that this is not easy to read. Maybe for somebody, slides will be available after the presentation. The second one is marine spatial planning. It is really important to work with all the stakeholders offshore to ensure that there is a broad shared vision about how space is being used by everyone who needs to access the seabed. Because this is not only about offshore wind. In the UK, it's also about the subsurface storage of carbon dioxide it is about ensuring areas of the seabed for environmentally sensitive species, etc. The third point is that it's no good to have offshore wind farms if they can't be connected to the power grid onshore. And that requires a large amount of electricity infrastructure. And what we are seeing is that the substations in coastal areas, for example, are often very difficult to plan because they are large industrial installations. And the timeline on projects often is driven more by the onshore components than by the offshore components. So think about the terrestrial side. And that also goes for the reinforcement of the transmission grid overall. This is not just about coastal communities, this is also about the deep reinforcement of the grid so that power from offshore wind farms can be brought to every citizen in cities like Taipei. The fourth one, just transition, is ensuring that this energy transition carries the support of the public and it carries the support of workers so that people see new opportunities. And in the UK, the Secretary of State 14 days ago pressed the button on the demolition of cooling towers of a coal-fired power station. As you know, the UK is rapidly exiting coal-fired power. What we have to ensure is that workers in that energy sector also feel included in the energy transition and that they can see a future in the new world and not only regret the loss of the old world. So that just transition, critically important also for political support. The next point is on smart grid. As we transit to systems with lots of variable generation, we need to ensure that the energy system can cope with that. And I'm really pleased to see a number of contributions also today, because this is all about transforming how we store energy, how we make it accessible to consumers, etc. And the final point, and this is becoming relevant in the Crown Estate, because actually my first offshore wind farm, which was built over 20 years ago, has already been decommissioned. We need to start to think about the circular economy, because materials are getting scarce, and materials in use for high power generators are getting scarce. And the blades on wind turbines, and there are many, many thousands now, will need to be recycled and reused. So the position of offshore wind in the circular economy will also be critically important to consider, and it will help drive investor confidence in the market. So there are 6 points of debate that are very actual in the UK today as we contemplate that future of 40 gigawatts by 2030 and up to about 100 gigawatts by 2050. These are the points I wish to make. There is a last slide that we are not going to talk to. It gives a few web links to information that you may find helpful. And with that, I wanted to conclude this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Royan, and thank you, Mr. Yo, for chairing the session. We will now open the floor for questions and answers. If you have any questions for those who are joining us on Teams, please use the raise hand button and to ask your questions. If you want to make any comments, please also use the raise hand button. For those who are watching the live streaming on YouTube, please leave your questions in the chat room. You can leave your questions in English or in Chinese. We have an interpreter to help us translate those questions. And when you ask your questions, please remember to briefly identify yourself and state your affiliation. And if your question is not directed to any specific person, our co-chairs will help direct those questions. All right, any questions from the floor? Any questions from our online participants? Yes. Yes, we have a question here.
I'm Cheng-Wei from E3 Green Energy Lab. Question to Mr. Ruingen that is that I really envy UK have such a vast marine space. But considering Taiwan on the East Coast, we have a huge space, but it's very deep. It's Pacific Ocean. Floating may be the solution, but wind condition is not very good. But to the west, we have Taiwan Strait, and you know we have a big neighbor there. So in terms of marine spatial planning, our priority will be different than yours. Would you please recommend us what are the top factors that we should pay attention to when we do the marine spatial planning? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your question, and that is there is less marine space on the west side of Taiwan, and therefore the point of marine spatial planning is maybe even more important than in the UK, because you have to think about every square mile of seabed. I will say a few things. One is that you cannot have enough data. So make sure that you understand that marine space. And in the UK, we run several databases. There is a link to one of those on the slides. We are investing in really mapping out that space so that we can designate it as best as possible. So investing in digital capabilities is really important. The second one is around dialogue. So I believe one of the bits that have worked well for us in the UK is that over the years we've had very strong dialogues between developers, between government, and between environmental stakeholders, so that we can develop a shared vision on the use of that space. And the third one is that there is is that often existing interests, they resist. So, for example, the shipping sector may feel that their navigation rights are being impacted by offshore wind farms. Again, in the dialogue, everyone will need to adapt to a future which is a net zero, low carbon future. So the assumption should not be that offshore wind is the one that needs to fit in the space that is left over. The assumption is, the challenge is to work with every other sector to develop a joint vision, which will require those other sectors to adapt to. And that's not an easy process, but it's an important process. And I'm very happy to have also a further offline discussion, if that is helpful, maybe including some of our specialists to go into this in a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your answer. It's very, very useful. Thanks.
I have two issues for Mr. Hu. I think you just mentioned for the new technology, like the 14 wind power technology, that the UK government have more incentive to the new technology, like the 14 wind turbines, compared to the fixed type. For the UK, the law for the incentive. The second issue is about just for the US, right? You told us about for the year of 2030, you have about 40 giga for the turbines, and for the net zero emissions for the year of maybe 2050s, it will reach to the 1/100. So do you have any idea about the grid stability? Just mentioned for the smart grid, or detailed information about how to maintain the grid stability. Use more energy storage or something like to some measures to make sure all the grid will be stable based on the more we so-called power from the offshore energies. The two issues. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I'll answer the last one first. It is clear that the grid needs to evolve, and there is a huge role for storage and for demand-side management. And energy storage is harder for us in the UK than it is for you in Taiwan, because we lack those very high mountains. We've got some fantastic mountains in Scotland where there is hydropower and where there is potential for pumped hydro stations, for example, including in Wales. But storage, large-scale storage, will be a critical factor, as is a host of new grid technologies. And it is a journey that we are on in the UK. We have hundreds of businesses who are active in this space, working with industrial consumers, etc. So going very well. On the first point, which is about innovation, it is important, it is essential, in fact, that we continue to have pathways to market for innovative projects. And therefore, these projects will have initially a somewhat higher cost. And what we are working is to ensure that there are routes to market for those projects in terms of access to seabed and access to funding, so that those technologies can be demonstrated and can mature and can become competitive. I will give one example. It is floating offshore wind. We cannot deliver net zero in the UK without floating offshore wind. Yet the technology today is more costly than fixed bottom offshore wind. So therefore, if we care about net zero by 2050, we have to develop a pathway to floating offshore wind that works for developers and works for investors. And that is something that in the Crown Estate we are working very hard on. And in fact, Flotation have successfully secured rights to a 100 megawatt project off the coast of Wales and England recently, working with their partner Cobra. So we were very pleased to see that, and we hope to see those projects come to fruition as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Royan. Due to time constraints, I'm afraid we will have to end the first session here. If there's any other questions, please leave your questions with the organizers. We will relay your questions and get back to you after the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to the second session today. In the second session, we are going to explore how the UK offshore wind industry works with Taiwan to set up the operation and maintenance sector. Each presenter has 5 minutes. There will be a timer at the top of your screen to remind you of the remaining time. I will now hand the floor to our co-chair, Mr. Huub de Rooyen, to introduce the first speaker in the session for us. Mr. de Rooyen, you may have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I realize I'm setting a very poor example as chairman on overrunning my own speaking slot. So my apologies for that. I would like to introduce Andreas Munk-Jansen from Ørsted, who are a leading operator in the UK on offshore wind, to talk to us about their experience on offshore wind O&M. Andreas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Deputy Minister Cheng, Mr. John Dennis, and Director General Yu, and Managing Director Rooyen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. It's a great pleasure to be here, and just looking at the agenda, I'm very excited to listen into the following presenters. But Before we get to that, I want to give you a view of where we are as a business, but also trying to look from an overall industry perspective and the collaboration in between UK and Taiwan historically, but also towards the future. So with that, not as much focus on technology, but rather on actually what is fundamental here, the people that needs to make this happen. Next slide, please. So very briefly on myself, you can read it on the left. I have actually spent quite some years in this field of offshore operation. Actually, also spent a few years in the UK helping that journey to take off back in 2010. And since that, of course, I now have the opportunity to actually join Ørsted and the whole business journey here in Asia Pacific, and particularly important is what you see on the right. Real things are happening. On the top of the screen, of course, you see the operations team of many of my new local employees that has joined the Operation Asia Pacific team within the last 12 months. And at the bottom, of course, we see real progress on our Cheng-Wei 1 and 2 wind farm, both on the offshore and the onshore side. So I'm very pleased to say this is, of course, a journey that we are all part of, and with us in Ørsted, we are very excited about the coming years to see, together with authorities, governments, and all our industry partners, we want to move this industry to hopefully the same level as we have seen UK growing over the last many years. Next slide. So without sounding as an old man, I still want to, of course, allow ourselves to remind where we came from and what we are, of course, also trying to make the bridge in between the UK offshore wind market, which really took off back in 2006, 2010, and under somehow specific circumstances as listed here, both in concern of what they need to develop of a framework, but also in concern of the skill sets and the processes for actually allowing the offshore wind to take off as a new successful industry in the UK. All that, of course, needs to be a kind reminder to all of us that, of course, we need to learn from this and we shouldn't make the same mistakes. And I'm very confident that we wouldn't make or mistakes as such, but at least we would learn clearly from what we have learned back in UK, and also how we see that industry have matured over the last decade. Next slide. Again, back to the people and the skill sets that we see from an Ørsted perspective has been somehow increasingly focused on talent training and the QSSE area. And over almost now 2 decades across the globe, and now also with Taiwan and Asia Pacific being included in that, we see a continuous focus, not just the technology growing size-wise and sophistication-wise, but also in concern of the industry and the people that we bring into this industry. So with that, of course, the focus that we have now for our future operations here in APAC, but also the development and construction of our project is obviously to bring all that good experience from the UK and apply that to the footprint of, in the first instance, Taiwan, and in the second instance, the wider Asia Pacific. Next slide. How we see it is that like Taiwan takes off from higher grounds with the best conditions to actually get into the industry on a more mature level than we potentially have seen what Europe and UK did back in the days. Here we have an opportunity across Taiwan and with both the offshore industry and the pipeline growing over the coming years to set new standards and also bring all the good experience in, both in concern of skill sets and learnings that we take into Taiwan, but particularly also grow a local industry that can stand on its own feet. Because We might see a lot of international players coming into the market, but hopefully we'll see over a short to mid-term perspective that actually the industry, the local supply chain development, etc., will grow significantly, and we will see industries, businesses, and service providers taking off to somehow create a strong framework for future offshore wind here in Taiwan. Next one, please. And again, back to the talent and the people. Of course, there's many disciplines. I don't want to go into details, but this is just showing that we, of course, looking into future operations of offshore wind here in Taiwan. We have learned a lot, and now we also need to apply that for Taiwan offshore wind. Next, please. And the first one, but besides, we of course have gained a lot of experience through our engagement at Formosa 1 as a partner and as a manager. We get to operate Greater Cheng-Wei 1 and 2A offshore wind farm by next year. And for that, of course, we need many different profiles. Some of them, as you saw on my first slide, has already joined the team. Next one, please. So why and how do we then gain the value of the collaboration and the partnership in between UK and Taiwan that has been strengthened over the last couple of years? Very tangible. We send our staff, we send our new employees to UK for long-term on-the-job training. So the first batch went off back in May, so 4 months ago, and they are currently being applied on various operating sites across the UK to learn about how to, in a safe and effective manner, operate offshore wind. Next slide, please. One too much, sorry. So the technicians basically get fully integrated into the site operations team, both on the west and the east coast of UK. They learn all the procedures and all the safety measures that needs to be in place before they get back to Taiwan by end of this year, and then start being ready to operate the Greater Cheng-Wei 1 and 2A. Next slide, please. They also get a lot of classroom training, and they get training in all kind of technical procedures, because obviously that is something that is under development here in Taiwan, but it's a very established business and set up in the UK. Why we chose to send them to the UK during this year, to allow that training to commence over a long period. Next slide, please. So they do whatever all our UK and British colleagues and fellows are doing on various operating sites. They take part in all tasks and all working procedures across the offshore wind, and that is at least how we see we gain a lot of experience being brought from the UK throughout many years into Taiwan and being applied for operations by next year. Next slide, please. And obviously, also very important, they get to understand which kind of company culture that they have entered into. One thing is that Ørsted as a business joins and enters into Taiwan, Asia Pacific, to learn about culture and also fully appreciate that. But it also goes the other way around of our new Taiwanese colleagues learning about our culture and how to ensure a strong balance in between. Next slide, please. So how I see, or how we see the future, is of course that this is a continuous steep learning curve for all the employees that will join, not just Ørsted, but the industry as a whole. It is an industry that will innovate, that will digitalize and be even more data-driven than what we see today. It will continue to strengthen the regulations and procedures in collaboration, of course, with the authorities and government here in Taiwan. And last but not least, it is to learn and then apply a very strong QSSE standard across the industry, because by the end of the day, that is what makes us successful. Next slide, please. And by that was my introduction for today, focusing most important on the people that needs to get this to become a success also in Taiwan, as an industry, as as a development journey that we are all part of. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for a very insightful presentation. I would encourage everyone or anyone who has questions, please share your questions on the chat. We have the time at the end of this session. Exchange of information is important. So with that, I would like to invite LJ Pan from the Action Group to talk about structural health monitoring of offshore wind farms. LJ, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hope. Yeah. 局长，各位先生、女士，下午好。Good morning and good afternoon to everyone who joined the event. Okay, I'm going to share about structural health monitoring services that we provide in Taiwan. Next. So first of all, I just want to brief introduction of Action Groups. We support our customer in oil and gas, offshore renewable energy, as well as nearshore constructions industry. Next. So we cover basically everywhere in the world. We have more than 100 locations, and we have about 2,000 employees. We have more than 700 millions in our turnover, and we have done more than 800 drilling campaigns and more than 500 mooring projects. And for renewable projects, especially offshore renewable, we have supported more than 80 renewable projects. And we also help our customer to install more than 2,500 foundation, offshore foundation. Next. Action Group was actually divided into 8 segments of business. So next. Sorry, one back. Okay, so the reason why we have different business segments because we cover the full life cycle of development of offshore wind farm. So, for example, before pre-development of the wind farm, we have a geo services segment, which is led by our company UTech, and they are specialized in geophysical and geotechnical survey. And then when you come to concept design and foundation engineering, we have offshore engineering segment, which is led by our 2H Offshore. And when you come to the development of the offshore wind farm, we have foundation and cable segment led by Meng, which actually provide hammer, templates, grouting, and any lifting tool as well. And then we also have mooring and anchor segment led by Intermore, which is specialized in anchor and mooring system, which is very good in our future floating wind in Taiwan. And then we also have, when we come to the operation and maintenance, we have asset integrity and monitoring segment, which I'm going to go deeper later, which provide all the analysis of the data as well as the monitoring of the health structure. Next. So as I said, the differentiator of the Action Group is actually we work across all phases of the life cycle, as I mentioned previously. Next. And I would like to focus on the structural health monitoring that we have provided to our customer in Taiwan. And this is from our asset integrity and monitoring segment. Next. Okay, so for this segment, we actually provide asset integrity solution. And you can see that I listed here the 8 of the solution that we provide. Structural health monitoring is one of them. Corrosion monitoring, CP monitoring, ROV inspection, seabed and cable survey, digital twins, visualization, engineering and assessment. And I'm not going detail on this, but next, please. Yes, so for structural health monitoring, we actually lead by this business segment by Pulse. And we have already more than 15 years of experience, and we have supported more than 700 projects and deliver more than 3 terabytes of the data. So that with the technology know-how and the track record that we have, we definitely can support the offshore wind farm industry. Next. Okay, and this is some of the picture of the sensor that we actually manufacture by ourselves, because utilizing the state-of-the-art of our segment, which is led by Pulse, we are using the sensor technology solution and also deep domain excellence in system architecture and integration know-how in the offshore wind. We were able to provide our customer with a cost-effective and efficient devices to monitor the health of the structure. Next. Yeah, so I will jump into the case study that we have in Taiwan, which we have the projects that we support one of the offshore wind farm, which is 900 megawatts. And we provide the structural loading, corrosion, and node monitoring. And this wind farm in Taiwan have 111 foundation, but we only contracted to monitor 3 of them. Next. So the purpose of this contract for this structural health monitoring campaign is actually to obtain high quality measurement of the actual dynamic inclination, motion, stress, corrosion, and degradation rates in the foundation structure, again the design assumption, and to operate safely and effectively within the acceptable criteria. So as you can see, we only have 3 foundations to monitor, but each of the foundation pile, we actually have more than about 13 corrosion sensor installed, which I show on the right-hand side of this slide. So these are the sensor location that we install on the foundation as well as the pile.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. We are a little bit behind schedule. Could you please wrap it up in maybe a minute? Thank you.
Okay, well, it's just the next one is actually the last slide. So yeah, beside I would just say that in summary, we were able to help the customer specify, design, build and install and operate the structural health monitoring for the offshore wind. Okay, next. Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you very much, LJ. And the next speaker is Graham Howe from the ION Group. Graham, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Hoop, and good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully, I'll try and bring us back onto time here. So what I'm going to talk today is about optimizing port-to-platform vessel operations to reduce fuel costs, and I'd like to pick up on some of the lessons we've already heard from today. This is very much based on lessons learned from the European experience and is looking at areas such as the margins that you have when you're building and operating wind farms and the need for efficiency. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. I'll just take a little time to introduce ION. We've been in business for around 30 years optimizing offshore operations, initially in the oil and gas sector. We're a global organization with about $200 million in revenue and about 400 staff. And our expertise is very much in maritime systems integration, data management, positioning, navigation, and the optimization for operations that you can do resulting from that. So if we move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so what we're looking at here is what are the challenges to cost-effective offshore wind operations. So looking at the challenges, when you're constructing and operating farms, particularly during the construction phase, you have multiple vessels. And it's not just multiple vessels, you have multiple contractors who are undertaking a very wide range of tasks. So you have lots of stakeholders operating in the same maritime space, trying to do a lot of the same work on the same assets at the same time. You also have a significant met-ocean condition dependency, which is exacerbated in Taiwan due to your local weather conditions, and of course the significant health and safety risks. And we've already heard today from Ørsted, on their approach to making sure that they operate efficiently. But I've always admired their kind of zero personal damage policies and the requirement to reduce those health and safety risks. So we've got multiple challenges all of which can add to the cost of operations and to the increase of emissions from the work that's undertaken. And this is another area that we're beginning to look at in the UK now. We have a number of research projects underway looking at the emissions stemming from the shipping relating to the construction of offshore wind farms. So the solution that we put in place is implementing a full planning and analysis solution that will reduce that inefficiency and identify areas for optimization. And I think it's important to note, as we've already heard today as well, Taiwan is not the UK. There are going to be significant differences in the operations of farms in Taiwan compared to the UK. So identifying those areas for optimization is critical. And obviously the benefits coming from that is you'll have effective coordination of your offshore activity, but more importantly, reduce fuel costs and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which, as I said, in the UK is becoming increasingly important. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So what we're looking at here is kind of three phases, and we're looking at our Marlin logistics solution. So one key element is the inputting of plans, which can come either direct or from third-party software, but it's from multiple stakeholders. And I really want to stress the fact that you do have multiple operators who need to understand what's going on offshore at the same time. And the need is to be able to integrate their planning. And they're often working in silos and not communicating those plans to each other. You need to look at the operational conflicts that are coming down the pipe. So when all of those plans are collated, you'll see the fact, somebody's trying to put one person onto a turbine at the same time as somebody else's. So also you're looking at your fleet and your routes optimization arising out of that. So in execution, you're then required to look at your real-time actuals against those plans. So what's actually going on? Because as anybody who's ever built an offshore wind farm knows, those plans change daily, often with the tide or indeed the wind condition. You're getting a common operating picture, you're avoiding conflict, you've got the real-time rules monitoring to make sure that nobody's speeding where they should be and nobody's creating additional risk. And finally, coming out of that, you have the performance analysis and you have your playback and audit support, but basically the capacity to take your data, look at that data, and then work out from that information, what could you have done better? So if we go to the next slide, please.
Graham, 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much, sir. So we have a suite of analytic tools, and what you can see here is in the top right there, I'm pointing at it, which is never very helpful. You can see a big red bar compared to a small red bar, and that's basically where a vessel was sitting idle and increased the operational time of a project deployment by an entire day. And the cost of a vessel for the day, many of you who are engaged in this project can understand, is very expensive. So basically what we're looking at is the analysis to tell you what you could have done better. And on that, I believe my next slide is my close slide. Yes, it is. So I'd like to thank you for your time today, and I look forward to any questions that you may have. Back to you, Hoob.
Good. Thank you, Graham. And over to Mr. Yu, please.
Okay. Thank you, Hao. The next presentation is from Taiwan side. I would like to invite Mandarin, who is the president of Star Energy, to share Star Energy's offshore wind O&M work overviews. Okay, the floor is yours, Mr. Lin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm very glad that you attended this meeting again. I'm Mandarin Lin, acting president of Star Energy Corporation. Today I will be presenting an overview regarding Star Energy's capability for offshore wind O&M works. Next, please. Here is the outline for today's presentation. Next, next, please. Next. Okay. Star Energy Corporation was established in 1996, which is a 100% subsidiary of Taiwan Cogeneration Corporation. And Taiwan Cogeneration Corporation is a subsidiary of Taiwan Power Company. So SEC's main focus is EPCI constructions and related works regarding renewable energy and the power industry. Next, please. We have an EPCI track record of 66 sets of onshore wind turbine and is currently contracted 116 sets of onshore wind turbine O&M works. So we are the only one company which hold EPCI and O&M experience in onshore wind turbine in Taiwan. That's why we have the competence to extend onshore O&M works into offshores. Next, please. Okay, next. Okay, this is general overview of an offshore wind farm. Okay, just for reference. Next. For preparing for contracting offshore works, SEC has built in an O&M center, which is the first one in Taiwan. The building located right next to the Zhanghua O&M ports, so it's quite easy and convenient to contract offshore O&M works. And the building now is estimated to be operational by end of this year. Next. One of main function within the O&M center is the surveillance and the monitoring center, which can provide the surveillance and the monitoring of the power systems, wind turbine, and the marine coordination system. Next, please. Next. Okay. Here we show the main tasks that are normally required in wind turbine and the BOP O&M contracts. SEC already have extensive experience with Thai power company substations and can provide the required statutory personnel and maintenance for the electrical equipment and the power cables. Next, please. Okay, here are some works item examples that would be carried out during O&M operations based on past project experiences, such as changing filters, recharging N2 accumulators, DC battery measurements, oil samplings, etc. Next, please. Okay, we already have more than 5 years experience with onshore wind farms and is currently extending into offshore. We have more than a dozen GWO trained technicians and is also able to conduct a wind turbine installation. We are continuously recruiting and conducting on-job training to improve the technical skills. Next. Okay, next. Actually, O&M works is a hard job. You have to work in a high temperature environment. So it's not easy to attract Taiwanese young people to join these works. So I think it is necessary to add some new technology into O&M works to improve the work environment. So I will introduce some new technology implementation. The first is
Mr. Lin, you have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bread inspection using UAV. SEC has recently purchased drone from MIRDC and is developing a way to safely and efficiently inspect the wind turbine blades without shooting down the wind turbine. Next. And we are trying to incorporate a virtual reality technology into training. New employees can be trained with the VR programs to simulate wind turbine maintenance. Next. And we are also trying to incorporate augmented reality technology into O&M operations to integrate and remotely interact with the actual site in real time to ensure wind turbines stability. Okay, that's all for my presentation. Thank you all for listening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lin. Hope, please.
Thanks very much. And the next speaker is Craig Morris from British Engineering Services. Over to you, please, Craig.
Hello. Thanks, everybody, for the invitation to speak today. I can't see my slides, so there we go. Yeah, so as it says, from British Engineering Services, as that would suggest, we're a UK-based company. Next slide, please. Okay, so the scope of our work really in the wind turbine field is based around statutory inspection and equipment performance. In order to deliver this, we have a dedicated offshore division. So this is a team of people that are focused into this work. And we operate at quite a large scale to do this. So we cover around a third of the UK's offshore turbines and even more onshore. So what we're doing at the moment is taking this experience from the UK and exporting it around the world, Taiwan being a specific example of this. And what we believe is that the maintenance and inspection activity that is undertaken can give you really powerful data in order to further plan for your operations and activities on site. The next slide, please. So this is an example where we've started in the UK of working further backwards in the project. So not just picking up the inspections once the site is operational. What our data told us is that most of the mistakes were small, avoidable, and they were happening earlier in the process onshore at the loadout or at the factory. So what we've done is extended the program backwards through the supply chain in order to pick some of those up. Next, please. So most importantly, really, if you could click a couple of times and bring the detail up. These outages are expensive. So we can go next, sorry. Again, there you go. So with those 3 bits of detail there, what we find is that if we can maximize the outage, so if we can put more work to be conducted on the turbine at any visit, that obviously reduces the operational costs to the site, and it means that the turbine can run more efficiently for longer. So in the UK and many other places, a statutory inspection is a requirement, but we can build in other ancillary services such as non-destructive testing, blade inspections with UAVs, as the last speaker also mentioned there. Probably when we go away from the safety aspect and keeping people safe, which is obviously vitally important, to these ancillary services. The next slide, please, details around how we look after the gearbox. So these are services that are vitally important to look after, and it can be done very cost effectively. It's just about finding the right time in the program to do it. So the services that we've conducted on some of the larger turbines here, around looking at oil, the degradation of the oil, contamination and performance. And to conduct this survey, it can be sent away to a lab from anywhere in the world. But really, it can give you real vital information to the turbine's performance that can forward plan what your program looks like and where your outages should be and any maintenance. We can probably all agree that it's much more effective to catch these problems when there's a sample on a report than when the turbine fails and goes out of production. Next, please. That's the turbine. So one more, if you would. There you go. So what this all leads out to, and conscious I've only got around a minute left, is we can give a heat map to where you should focus your time and activity. So on the safety aspects, we can look at where the defects in equipment are, and then where obviously you can look at spending your maintenance time and activity. And on the next slide, we can further look at the equipment and specifically which items are more likely to fail and which are less likely to fail. We can benchmark one site against a particular field or a particular turbine type, or we can replicate that around turbines around the world. And what this means is you can get an indication of how your turbines, your O&M staff and your team are performing, and really down to a granular detail, you can understand what your risks are. And once we understand those risks, you can plan to mitigate them. I think the next slide is my last one, so thank you.
So thank you very much, Craig. And we move on to Richard Watson from Solmara Subsea.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon for some of you. It's a pleasure to meet you all, and thank you, Howard, and the Director General, you, for the invitation and the opportunity to introduce Solmara. And I wanted to share a bit of our experience in Europe and also explore our future for O&M in Taiwan. But for those of you that don't yet know Solmara, we're an international organisation established in 2019, founded on the principles of decarbonising the survey sector using innovative solutions. So we believe that through the adoption of new technology and methodology that we can drive efficiency, we can reduce costs, and we can reduce the harm to those hard-working individuals that work offshore for us. And ultimately, we want to contribute towards a net zero low-carbon future. So decarbonisation, I'll mention it a lot through this quick 5 minutes, it's using that innovation to provide survey solutions is why we exist. It's our culture, and it's in our blood as an organisation. And luckily, that means we're managing to attract some of the top talent in the energy sector. As our message, we believe, resonates with many of those individuals, and I hope it will do with many of you in Taiwan and some of the organisations here today. Yeah. But if you'd like to go to the next slide. So we're headquartered in Glasgow, in Scotland, and we currently employ 95 people around the world. And we're established with our offices in the UK, of course, the USA, Mexico, and Singapore. We have 9 other entities around the world in what we describe as frontier energy sector markets. Now, each of these there's some barriers to entry, and we use innovation and willing clients and partners to enter those markets. And if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah. Most recently, and I guess most excitingly for us and many here, is that our expansion into Taiwan. Now we have a fully incorporated business, Solmara Renewables Limited, was incorporated earlier this year, and we're currently conducting our 3rd project in Taiwan. We are working closely with and alongside Dongfang Offshore to complete some construction support activities and deliver other services as well. But as you'll note on the slide that's on the screen at the moment, we're also executing works with Ørsted using uncrewed technology to deliver construction support, seabed monitoring surveys, as-built survey data as well. So that USV is out there at the moment, and it's used off a mother vessel, so to deploy in the field on the Greater Cheng-Wei 1 and 2 fields. But this is the first time that an operation like that has happened here in Taiwan. And in order to execute the works, we had 3 fundamental things that needed to happen to conduct USV operations. One of those was a forward-looking client, exceptional partners to work with on the ground and help us push this forwards, and then also a regulatory framework that allows for innovation to thrive. Now, we're lucky that all of these can be found here in Taiwan, and it's very exciting for a company like us. If you'd like to go to the next slide. So our services cover the life cycle of a wind farm, from the early stage site characterization activities, including seismic and geotechnics, and all the way through the pre-construction, construction phases. And we execute activities such as UXO investigation, trenching and installation support. And where we can, we use remote services. But where we must, we will put people offshore. But we're here, of course, to discuss O&M and those lessons that we've learned in Europe, and share a key one with all of you. And I'll come to that one in a minute. So if you'd like to go to the next slide. What have we learned by working in the UK with unmanned and uncrewed systems? Besides working out the kinks of new technology before trying to deploy that globally, because it's nothing happens first time. There's lots of lessons that we learn every day. But what we really identified is that change is really hard. And wherever you can, you should adopt that change early and invest in the future. Because it's harder to fix something than it is to get it right the first time. So we've had to navigate a fairly rigid regulatory framework in the UK and improve the capability of USVs to execute the works. So using slightly different solutions and sensor packages to do this. And it's been quite a challenge in the UK, as it's such a mature market where systems, people and budgets, they're already in place. And as we know, people fear change. So bringing something new always has resistance. So that challenge basically meant that we had to show the end user, the engineers, the people that are redesigning and taking the lessons learned into the next development, that the archaic methodology of yesterday for acquiring data is not really correct for tomorrow. And we believe it's certainly not correct for Taiwan and the floating market, as we've already started to prove in Europe, and there are definitely better ways to do it. But what does it look like? On the screen, you'll see a USV with an image of an ROV below. But we are basically working towards the use of unmanned solutions to provide all subsea inspection activities, including geophysical surveys, subsea inspections, and the like by 2026, maybe 27, depending on some of the steps of technology. But the latter is to be delivered by combining an unmanned surface vessel, the big red one that you see, and a USV and a hybrid type remote ROV vehicle. Now, each of these pieces of technology are advancing at a rapid rate. And what we're doing at Samara is bringing those pieces of technology together to offer a new service as we go forwards. So the idea is that these systems will conduct operations autonomously and have an AI to allow them to make certain decisions themselves. But however, the journey towards autonomy requires a significant series of leaps in that technology. And therefore, to get to 2026, we still need human intervention all the way through. And even in 2026, when we have that technology out there working, they'll still need people there to maintain that work, to be able to interact with that, to be able to command that system, to tell it what to do at the very beginning. But we're in the process of building a remote operations centre at our headquarters in Glasgow. And we're looking where best to locate our second sector to cover the time zones that we work in. And Taiwan could be a great opportunity for that. So for operating in Taiwan, we will further invest in our local infrastructure, partners, and our workforce. And where we're definitely going to be looking for support from people here and people locally. And we look forward to engaging and working with many of you in that future as we go forwards. So I guess the key takeaways from here, I'm conscious of the 5 minutes, is that the change is hard. You have the opportunity at the moment to innovate and look forwards and put systems in place that allow for new technologies to keep pushing forwards and reducing the carbon footprint and the impact that we have on the environment. But also with this technology, we get the opportunity to train people and to change how we work as businesses and as individuals. And I guess that's my key takeaway. So thank you to everybody, and Hao, back over to you.
Well, thanks very much for a really exciting presentation there, Richard. So I hope you get some good response. And I would like to invite Maggie Macmillan from the Miros Group to talk to us. Maggie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hoob, and good morning, good afternoon, and very warm greetings from a sunny Aberdeen, which is unusual for us. Just going to kick off straight away. Miros have been around for about 30 years, providing ocean insights to our clients across many different sectors in the marine world, spanning oil and gas, commercial shipping, and in the last 4 years supporting our clients in the offshore wind sector, predominantly in Europe, but hopefully going forward to support our new friends in Taiwan. We understand that Taiwan has a very challenging environmental conditions, and hopefully in this very short presentation I can demonstrate how Miros can be a value-added strategic partner in this market. So I'm going to start with a very short video animation Please go ahead.
Having reliable access to accurate sea state data is crucial for efficient operations in the offshore and maritime business. However, many available solutions are cumbersome and costly to install, maintain, and upgrade. Miros Sea State as a Service is a modern, flexible way to securely access reliable, real-time, and historical sea state data essential for your operations. The Sea State as a Service offering is an all-inclusive, scalable subscription plan, including Miros Dry, IoT-enabled sensors, as well as the Miros Cloud service for easy data access. Miros takes on the risk of owning, insuring, and maintaining the sensors, so you don't have to. The benefits are obvious. Reliable data access anywhere, anytime, from any device. Secure data collection and storage. Remote support, software updates and maintenance. No cost of ownership, just a fixed monthly fee. With Miros Sea State as a Service, the data is delivered hassle-free at a predictable rate, so you can focus on optimizing your operations. Contact us for more information.
Next slide, please. Looking at our offshore wind toolbox, you'll see there a variety of different IoT-enabled sensors, which, as you will see from the animation, will collect data, sea state data in real time and collect that directly in our cloud platform. The sensors measure a variety of different sea state parameters as well as weather parameters depending on your wind farm and the parameters that you're looking to measure. All of the sensors are very small and compact and easily installed, only requiring power and a LAN connection. And all of our sensors can be installed on fixed and floating assets. And currently we have sensors installed on both fixed bottom turbines as well as floating in the UK, and also being used in many operational vessels across the sector. And due to the dry nature of our sensors, because they're not submerged in water, there's very minimal maintenance over the lifetime of the sensor itself. Next slide, please. Next. So there's two main areas where Miros can support clients in this market, specifically during installation. Typically, during this phase, data on the sea state is taken from wave buoys, which are typically not near the operational site where the assets are being installed. Therefore, you don't have an accurate picture of actually what's happening in that location. By installing our sensors on the installation vessels, this is going to give you an accurate picture of what's happening at that location, and therefore enabling safe and efficient operations, allowing the vessels to work within their operational limits. We actually supported a jack-up vessel during the construction of the Formosa 1 project in Taiwan to help them navigate through a typhoon. So already Miros adding value to the offshore wind sector in Taiwan. It's important to also add that our sensors are the only DNVGL approved sensor in the market to support the measuring of the alpha factor in relation to wave monitoring. Next slide, please. Finally, within the O&M sector, this is really where you're getting your bang for your buck in terms of what we can do with our data. Having strategically placed sensors across the wind farm is going to give you a holistic overview of the environmental conditions, meaning that you can reduce your wasted vessel trips, reduce CO2 emissions, and ensure a safe transfer and execution of your O&M tasks across the field. All stakeholders will have access to the same data at the same time, meaning that whether you're onshore or offshore, you can all share the same data across one or multiple projects. In addition to that, the data can also be, other data can be integrated to our user interface, for example, weather forecasts and AIS, vessel AIS data, meaning that you can have a really good full picture of what happens across the wind farm. Next slide. So no matter where you are or what interface you are within the project itself, all stakeholders can have access to the same data at the same time on any device, and the user interface can be tailored to your specific needs. and customized accordingly. And if you go to miros.app, you can actually see real-time data from some of our clients' projects in Europe at the moment to give you a feel for what that data looks like and how it can help with the operation. And finally, next slide. Just to recap why you would want to work with Miros, if you can just go through the bullet points next. We can provide real-time accurate wave and weather data. We provide the hardware, the cloud services, software to access the data, a very experienced project team who are GWO certified, life of field technical support. We can collaborate and work with our clients to make sure we have a tailored solution. And because of the commercial model and the subscription model that we are promoting, we can help you reduce your CapEx, which then has a knock-on effect to reduce your OpEx as well. So I hope that's given you a feel for how Miros can work with you to help develop the offshore wind market in Taiwan. And thank you so much for the opportunity to participate today. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maggie. And straight on to Edmund Cole from Seabed Scour Control Systems. Over to you, Edmund.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm from Seabed Scour Control Systems. Next slide, please. So most of you might be aware of the processes of scour, but this happens whenever there is a solid object placed near the seabed. The solid object causes the current to deflect around it, which then creates vortexes, removing the sediment and digging scour pits. Next slide, please. Yep. In the early 1960s, researchers found that areas of natural seaweed play a very important role in retaining sand along our coastlines. Next slide. So then in the early 1980s, we worked extensively with Shell in the South North Sea, and through extensive trials, we created the SSCS frond mat. Next slide. The frond mats are very unique. They are the only soft solution to scour. This is because they are made up with no hard solid objects, and so they allow themselves to flow naturally with the current. They have a design life of 25 plus years, and throughout their lifetime in situ, they require zero maintenance. We have had over 10,000 frond mats installed in the North Sea alone, and our first mats that were installed in 1984 for a pipeline in the Lehman oil field are still there protecting that pipeline to this day. As you can see on the photos on the right, that is our frond mat immediately after installation, and below is from a follow-up survey that shows that the sediment has accumulated in and around the matted area and returned the seabed to its natural conditions before any works were created. Next slide, please. From our early days in the 1980s working in the North Sea, we have expanded to provide our fronded solutions globally in almost every sea and ocean across the globe. Next slide. This is our standard frond mat. We manufacture these all in-house, and we can also manufacture these to any size or shape required for the project. We are finding now in the offshore wind industry, we are making more trapezoid shaped mats to fit around turbine piles. Next slide, please. Next again, please. Oh, back one. Yeah, thanks. So the science behind our frond mats. The fronds create a viscous drag barrier, and so they will flow naturally with the current, but at the same time absorb the current's energy. The secondary byproduct of this is that they are so effective at slowing the current that sediment in suspension will be deposited in and around the matted area, and a fiber reinforced sandbank will be created. Next slide, please. In flume tank trials that we had conducted at Trondheim, it was found that in a variable flow rate with just 4 rows of our fronds, it reduced the near bed current by up to 92%. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. Relating that back to a Hillstrom graph, many geotechnical engineers will be very familiar about. You can see when the water velocity is reduced, that then the energy needed for erosion to take place is no longer there. And then with a 90% reduction in energy velocity, you can see sedimentation can start to happen. Next slide, please. One of our projects which had live seabed current monitoring, it was found that the seabed current was about 3 knots per second. And then after flowing through our frond mats, this was reduced to 0.2 knots per second, giving a 93.3% reduction in seabed current velocity. Next slide, please. We are fully endorsed by DNV, certifying our frond system. Next slide, please. We are also heavily endorsed by fisheries here in the UK as the only solution compatible with the fishing fraternity, because there are no snagging risks to their fishing gear and the seabed is returned to its natural conditions. Next slide, please.
Sorry to interrupt, you have about a minute.
Lovely, this is my last slide. One of our latest innovations for the offshore industry is the SysProtect project. We are working in a consortium with a major offshore wind developer. We have had a live installation of this system this year, and the premise behind it is to completely remove the need for a secondary scour protection vessel. All of the scour protection work can be conducted on the piles onshore, and the system essentially works like a umbrella system. And so as the pile itself is installed on the seabed, in this case this is for a suction pile, simultaneously the deployment arms will unfold from the structure and deploying the scour protection at the same time. ORE Catapult, which are one of the consortium members, analysed our frond systems, and they stated that use of our frond systems will reduce the levelised cost of energy by about 40 pence per megawatt hour. Thank you all for listening to my presentation.
That was very insightful, Edmund. I certainly learned a lot. Thank you very much. Mr. Yu, over to you.
Okay. Next, I'm pleased to invite Lucas Lin, the CEO of Swanco Renewable Energy, to give us a presentation on the Taiwan first commercial operation offshore wind farm in Taiwan. Okay, Lucas, please.
Thanks, Director General Yu. Thanks for your introduction. This is Lucas Lin. I'm the CEO of Swanco Renewable. Next page, please. So I think, before my presentation, probably I needed to say thanks the good blessing of Mazu, or the Ocean of God, because Formosa 1, when we are building the Formosa 1, I think we completed this project within the budget, in line and with excellent HSE record. Yeah, I think there is almost no injury during our 4 million hour construction period. But as you could see right now, although the other project, they are facing COVID-19's challenges. So I think, okay, after we complete this project, and until now there are 2 years. So the first of all, I will have a very brief introduction about this offshore wind farm. And then, because in Taiwan, we don't have a mature supply chain here, and we are lack of experience in O&M. So what is our arrangement to offer or to make sure this first commercial operating wind farm in Taiwan could reach our original expectation? Actually, in the past 2 years, our capacity factor is slightly higher than our original expectation. I think that's one thing. And the other thing is I also are going to touch, because this wind farm, although it's very nearby the shore, but currently the harbor is not able to offer 24/7 service. Next page, please. So as you can see, here is the overall map of Formosa 1. And as I just mentioned, this wind farm is very nearby the shore. There is one Longfeng fish harbor, but unfortunately, the tide difference is quite large. So during the low tide, is completely not able to use that. So we are only able to use the harbor, from Taichung to be here. And currently, there are 128 megawatt, including 2 4-megawatt wind turbine and 26 megawatt turbines. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there is a Formosa 1 and Formosa 2 there. And also for Swango Renewable Energy, we also have Formosa 4. So that means in this area, okay, if we are able to complete all those construction, there are around a 5 gigawatt project within this area. So definitely in the long run, we could have a very strong synergy, for those wind farm operation. That's one thing. And for Formosa 1, there is another special element here is there is a main mast, because this is a demonstration wind farm. So we are not only operate the offshore wind farm, we also needed to maintain the main mast and then to offer some wind resources or some related data for all of those developers, or at least for our government. I think that's the first page. Next one, please. So as I mentioned, because there is no mature supply chain, we don't have O&M service experience in the past. But fortunately, our team, they participate in the Formosa 1 construction. Start from the development and engineering, design, and participate all of those installation. So we have all of those related technology in-house. So our arrangement is more, the first thing we are responsible is about the asset management.
Excuse me. I think the microphone has been muted.
Oh, okay. So how about now? Yeah, it's okay?
Yes, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm not sure when I muted. Start from asset management?
Yes.
Okay. So like I mentioned, our work scope will divide into 3 parts. The first one is asset management. And so during the asset management, the first thing we needed to maintain all of those stakeholders, including, have the official report to the Thai Power, to TPC, to our central government, and also needed to maintain the good relationship with the local stakeholder, including the fishermen or local village. That's one thing. The second thing is about the contract management. Yeah, as I mentioned, SRE, we are developer, but right now we are going to operate this wind farm. So there's a lot of maintenance. We needed to leverage a third party to do that. So I think we focus on the contract management. And the other thing is also some regulation compliance. For example, we needed to offer the report to the EPA. We also needed to have a regular report to the BOE, including those data from MANMAST. And of course, the OPEX or the budgeting plan is also extremely important. And there is also another one is to monitor or about the curtailment coordination. Yeah, that means we needed to have a very good cooperation or communication with Thai Power. That's one thing. And the other thing is for the daily operation part, I think I would like to focus on the HSE management, because offshore wind is a completely new industry in Taiwan. So how could we bring those safety DNA no matter into our colleagues or to those third party, local contractor? That's also extremely important. And the second thing, in order to bring in such kind of safety DNA, there is another important system we apply is the work permit system. Yeah, because all of those work is going to take, we needed to review all of those risks and make sure they have a risk mitigation plan. I think that's part of operation management. And of course, we also need to go back to deal with the wind turbine supplier. And for those BOP part, I think I would like to use the onshore substation. Definitely to do the schedule inspection or maintenance for those high voltage or low voltage equipment. That's one thing. But the most important is for SRE, we also bring in the senior authorized person or control engineer system into our system. So in order to have such kind of high voltage management system, we needed to write down all of those detailed operation system. And that means in the future, we don't need to have, a very difficult certificate engineer to operate. Only those engineers, they could follow our SOP, and then they could operate our onshore substation. I think that's also one part. And the other part I also want to mention is scoring and also structure survey.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Lin, you have about 1 minute left. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So I think, like I mentioned, is the current in Taiwan Strait is extremely strong. So we needed to, review or check those scoring protection year by year. Next page. And like I just mentioned, is because although our wind farm is nearby shore, but we still needed to use the Taichung Harbor. So right now in Taichung Harbor, we have our operation base. And in this operation office, we have a marine coordination or SCADA run, also some storage or administration, and including our OEM supplier service team. They all stay in the Taichung Harbor. And like I mentioned, we have Formosa 1 and Formosa 2. So for these two teams, we keep them in the same building. So I think we also could have some synergy layer. They could help each other in resources. And the other thing is in Taichung, we also have the SATV, and that could offer 12 single cabins for technician and to stay offshore for 7 days. I think that's a very quick and roughly introduction about the first offshore commercial offshore wind in Taiwan. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. Share your appearance. Hope, please.
Thank you. And straight to Peter Thompson from Arab. Over to you, Peter.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Peter Thompson. I'm the East Asia Energy Business Leader for ARAPS, based in Hong Kong, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'd like to introduce to you what we call our Life Extension and Asset Management Platform, which we use the acronym LEAP to describe. It's essentially a fairly unique software package that we've developed that's primarily there for foundations. And I think that one of the key things that one needs to realize when looking at operations and maintenance of an offshore wind farm, the only piece of equipment that is really irreplaceable is the foundations. So we've developed this tool to facilitate the management of that key item in the wind farm development. So next slide, please. Well, that doesn't look like the right slide. There should be another slide. Is there another slide? That one, yeah, sorry, it seems like it's out of order. Basically, what we try to do is we use the sort of monitoring program and the ongoing assessment of the wind farm foundation integrity to increase the life extension of the foundation. And that's really taking advantage of the sort of design conservatisms that you have in foundation design, particularly in the fatigue limit state. So for this situation, we can realize life extension of in excess of 7 years typically for an offshore wind farm. And if you put that into perspective, if you're looking at a 500 megawatt offshore wind farm, the net revenue per year is roughly $30 million US dollars. So if you multiply that by the number of years of life extension that you can achieve, then it's quite a significant saving to our clients. And we do this through a series of sort of instrumentation that's using SCADA data as well as sort of accelerometers and strain gauges. Next slide, please. Okay, so I should probably go back to the first slide because it seems to have moved place. But essentially, the way this works is that we would monitor the offshore wind farm. We would calculate the fatigue life of the offshore wind turbine that it's monitoring, and then we can essentially from that data, and the longer the period that one monitors, the more accurate this calculation can be done. We can actually assess how much more life is left in that foundation system, and that's obviously very beneficial to our clients. The software that we produce is actually a modular system, so it can actually fit straight into the client's own software monitoring management system. But it also offers a sort of a real-time monitoring system as well to facilitate the operations and maintenance staff to understand the performance of each of the wind farms or each of the wind turbines that it's attached to, and sort of guide those operations and maintenance staff towards any issues that may be occurring with the foundations before anything more serious occurs. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Okay, so just in terms of our own development, we initially started this process with a number of sort of strain gauges that were located below the seabed level, essentially monitoring the foundation system throughout the life of the structure. We've then been developing this system to sort of minimize the amount of instrumentation required. So we're now in really what we call the second phase here, which is really having those strain gauges above the waterline as well as accelerometers along the mast itself. And the next stage for us is to really try and use the sort of virtual sensors within the SCADA system to be able to assess each of the performance of the foundations, even looking at a level through extrapolation of each weld in that foundation system. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, it's a software package that bolts on quite easily. It uses the power, it's powered by the sort of AWS system, so it can actually bolt on quite easily to existing operations and maintenance systems. And what Arups will provide is the computational power behind that. All this data is sent to a cloud. We can then provide the computational power using Power BI, and that will be accessible not only to us, but also to the client in real time, and we can provide those expert support in the background. Next slide, please. Okay, just as an example, we've actually deployed this system on around 10 wind farms now to date, so it's a fairly successful system. It's been deployed at different times, but as I mentioned before, the longer period that this assessment or the monitoring program is taken, the more accurate and the more life we can probably demonstrate from each of those different projects. So here's 3 examples. There's one that was monitored for 1 year in the UK, and we managed to justify the life extension from 35 to 51 years. So that's 16 years additional operation for the wind farm that can now be ongoing. Another one we obtained 7 years, but it can also be used for asset vendor due diligence. You know, when you're looking at selling or exchanging assets with different parties, then it can be used as a means of demonstrating an extended life, which then of course increases the value of that asset at any particular time. And then last slide, please. Okay, and this is really our sort of flagship project. We've actually got the LEAP system working at the moment on the London Array wind farm. So it's actually a very successful project for us. It's sort of directly monitoring some of the foundations for that wind farm site. So we're able to provide real-time data to our client to enable them to do sort of risk-based inspections and take a more long-term view in terms of the maintenance procedures that need to be undertaken for that particular wind farm. So I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. And finally, Adrian Yeaman from the Corel Group. Adrian, we can't hear you.
My apologies. So thank you, Hugh, and good day to everyone today. Thank you for the invitation to talk. My name is Adrian Yeaman. I'm the Director of Corel Energy Services and also a part of the Corel Group. So my presentation today is around how the Corel Group are contributing to the development of Taiwan offshore wind. Corel is, and do believe and stand for innovation, certainty and confidence to assist in the world's transition to a low carbon future. Next slide, please. So who is the Carel Group then? An introduction to Carel. Carel Group is a family organisation and it works as part of a parent group also that includes sister renewables companies such as RTS AG in Germany and RTS Wind in the UK. With a team of over 450 technicians across all three businesses, we do present a strong and substantial offer to the industry. And the Carel Group specialises in the onshore and offshore renewable energy sector. With our head office based in the northeast of England, our team have extensive experience of working on many of the most significant wind farms across the UK, in Europe, in Asia, and also in the emerging US offshore market. We are a recognised leader in the provision of manpower and maintenance services, including high voltage, low voltage and fibre optic engineering, specialist blade inspection and repair, construction support, service operations and maintenance, and statutory inspection services. Our knowledge and experience enable us to work with our customers to develop solutions that address the challenges of any projects and precisely meet their needs. Next slide, please. So what is our commitment then? As a team, we have a strong management team with extensive knowledge and transferable experience on high voltage, low voltage, fibre optic, blade inspection and repair, construction support and service operations and maintenance activities, as delivered over many projects and through our highly trained and skilled workforce. What our commitment is also is safety, excellent health and safety records and ownership of responsibility for safety at all levels of the business. Everyone must be involved, everyone must see the responsibility. Also quality and reputation. We have a proven quality of workmanship and strong customer liaison during the project. This is evidenced with our repeat customer and gaining new projects each year. Next slide, please. Further to our commitments, invest and train for the future. So the commitment to invest and develop a highly skilled local workforce in Taiwan with gap analysis of the training and skill needs to align Taiwanese colleagues to global standards, for example, GWO, HVLV, blades and approved competency routes for service technicians. Also our commitment to support and mentor, transferring best-in-class practices and management of personnel from the UK to Taiwan to work, train and mentor the Taiwanese workforce. And how do we achieve this? Through our local office, through our Taiwanese colleagues and local contacts in Taipei, including our relationship with the DIT. Management has been seconded to work in Taiwan also to provide an important link between our parent group and our emerging and successful business operations in Taipei. Next slide, please. Project experience in Taiwan. Excuse me 1 second. So we have project experience in Taiwan. So we've worked on Formosa 2, a wind farm to generate electricity to power 380,000 households each year. Our scope of works on this one here was to provide project documentation, export cable, HV and LV, and fibre optic, jointing at the TJB, array cable terminations on 47 wind turbines. The other projects we've been involved in include Cheng-Wei demonstration. Again, this is scope of works for project documentation and procurement FO, hardware materials, export cable, and post-installation testing for the offshore and onshore substation assets. Yunlin as well, so the first 66 kV offshore wind farm in the region, and the scope of works there, HV and FO termination and testing of subsea array cables between wind turbines, and then Formosa 1, phase 2, scope of works there, project documentation, export cable HV and FO, jointing, and also array cable terminations on 22 wind turbines there. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. So in summary then, Carel Group has committed to taking part in the development of Taiwanese offshore wind market from subsea works through to topside operations and maintenance, bringing our knowledge and experience. Collaboration with local companies and investment in local talent will see a strong Taiwanese market for the future of renewable energy. My thanks to our superb Taiwanese hosts and all parties concerned with arranging the meeting today. Thank you for listening.
And thank you, Adrian, and all speakers. A fascinating overview, and we have about 5 minutes left for questions. I repeat my earlier comment also for those following this online, that any questions that you have for the speakers, please do submit them. We will ensure that questions get answered. Also, if we don't have the time to do that during this particular session. So do submit your questions. And I would like to ask, do we have a question?
Yes, we do receive a question here from our participant online. The question is, why does the UK have so few developers and EPC or EPCI firms? Is it because of the risks or price competition?
Is any of the speakers wishing to address that? It's maybe not directed to one of the presenters. What I would say on that question is that there is a very, the UK is a very international and a very open market, and certainly that has contributed to the very strong growth that we have seen. We have been able in the UK to use best practice experience globally. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. And here we have another question from the floor. The question is, the Taiwan labor market poses a challenge to the development of offshore wind industry. From your observation, what are the key skill shortage here, and what initiatives from the UK can potentially be adopted here in Taiwan in order to solve the problem? Thank you.
Any of the speakers wish to respond, then please raise your hand or do speak.
Hi, it's Richard Watson at Solmara. And the one thing we've identified within our organisation is there is a lack of experience within the survey industry. So there are lots of things that we are doing and many other companies are doing to change that. And that's working with the local university. It's working with some of the existing and smaller survey companies that exist within the country and taking their teams offshore with us to help them grow and get that knowledge that comes with it. What we're also doing is using those persons to support the unmanned solutions as well. So they're getting the technical know-how, the theoretical know-how, and then actually being able to go out and deliver that, and in time be able to deliver that for their own business and not just for us. But I think we do need to do more.
Thank you very much, Richard. And Adrian Yeaman, I see your hand.
Yes, yeah. My answer to that question really is the increase in GWO training and opportunities to skill the workforce. Our earlier speaker today made a fantastic point there about transferring Taiwanese technicians across to the UK and European market to really evidence and build that knowledge base before returning them back to the Taiwanese market. It'd be good to ideally over time flip that back on its head and really have that in-house model in Taiwan to really skill people, provide all the necessary GWOs, and really keep it centered within Taiwan and build that skill within the locality.
Thank you, Adrian. And I'm seeing the hand of Andreas.
Yes, thank you very much. Both trying to echo what has been said here, but also saying I think our experience so far over the last years have been very much to see people coming not just to our company but also across the industry here in Taiwan, and with the right attitude, with the right motivation and interest. Because I have no doubt, just looking at the presentations and the different companies represented today, as well as authorities and government, we can do what requires in concern of skill development and training. as long as we get started in timely manner, so to speak. So I think, at least without sounding too optimistic, I think so far we see a flow of talents, as also mentioned just now, through university, starting early with apprentices programs, as we also have experienced from the UK and learned from, which we now also start in the southern part of Taiwan. So it's grabbing somehow the society at an early stage, and also trying to convince like normal people in Taiwan that this is an industry that wants the best for Taiwan, and thereby saying people either come as young students or they come from other industries. We see both, and so far in a very positive way. But obviously the QSSE area is a key area for what we see as a focus going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And that gets us right back to 5:25. So please do submit your questions online, keep them coming. And I would like to give the floor back to Mr. Yo to introduce the next speaker in the third session, which is on smart grid and floating wind.
Okay, the session 3 we will discussion about the smart grid and the floating wind. Firstly, I would like to invite Mr. Jeffrey Dai, the Director of Strategy Product Development Unit of Delta Electronics, to present some real case in Taiwan. Mr. Dai, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So here I want to share you about some real case to supporting the Taiwan energy transformation in the smart grid application, especially in the energy storage. So next one, please. So first, let me introduce the Delta Group. So our company is founded from the 1971, and so this year is already have the 50 years history. And we are the #1 leader about the switching power supply and the DC bus frame, but also we diversify our business to several different categories, including the renewable energy and the energy storage. So our sales revenue achieved $9.6 billion in last year. Next, please. So for the renewable energy and the energy infrastructure, we already covered several different product categories, including the EV charging station and also the PV inverter, wind turbine converter, and also the PCS and the battery system for the energy storage system. Next, please. So for the energy storage, actually is quite important for the renewable energy penetration. So we know the conventional power plant actually is quite stable, but the ramp rate is quite slow, and also not be able to supporting the green power requirements. So because it use a lot of fuel, the fossil fuel. But for the renewable energy, it's quite clean and green, but less also trouble for the fluctuation and the intermediates. And so based on that one, we need the energy storage to do in between to balance in the system, especially when the high penetration of the renewable energy, the inertia of the grid is getting lower, and also cause the grid to be unstable. Okay, next please. So we already have several energy storage case in utility, especially in Taiwan. So there's one case we want to share with you in this speech. Next. So we are talking about the Kinmen project. Okay, next please. Okay, you can see the Kinmen actually is on the west side of the Taiwan, but it's quite close to the mainland China, okay? But still government by Taiwan, okay? So there's a long history to talk, but that's not our topic today, okay? So this is island. You can see is close to mainland China, but all the power cannot get from the mainland China. All the power must be produced by themselves. So there is some diesel generator, and currently also a lot of renewable energy built there. In the winter season, the renewable energy penetration can go up to the 40% of the total grid. So this kind of situation also causes the grid of this island is get unstable. So you can see the list have several times break out the whole island in the past 3 years. Especially in the 2019, 2 times just the generator outage caused the twice the whole island get break out. Okay, next please. So Taipower is try to figure out some solution to get the breakout situation getting better. So you can see here is a chart about their frequency over the Kinmen Island. On the left-hand side, you can see the frequency fluctuation is quite higher, almost plus minus 0.05 hertz in the frequency fluctuation. And we built our system 2 megawatt and 1 megawatt hour. It's not big. It's just a small energy storage system. But we enable the frequency regulation mode to be activated in the middle of the chart. And next, please.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Dai. You have about 1 minute left. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So it's also getting the frequency getting more stable. And also we have there's one case they try to drop 4.3 megawatt power, and the frequency dropped very quickly. But our energy storage response in 200 milliseconds, then also to get the full power and to make the frequency drop slope getting smoothly, and following to get the grid not getting the breakout. Okay, next page. And also we build several cases to do an ancillary service for the AFC. The AFC means the automatic frequency control. So using that one system, currently we have 2 sites. Each one has a 5 megawatt. And to participate in ancillary service of the Taipower and to supporting the frequency. Okay, next. And we also have several projects behind the meter for the CNI. They can do the dispatch, the power when Taipower needed that one. They will request a demand response, and we use the energy storage to support that one. And also have some microgrid to supporting the local requirement like the EV charging station. And this case already built on the site. Okay, next. Okay, so this is our quick summary and the presentation about our supporting. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dai. Hope, please.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce Joanna Doyle from Reactive Technologies. Joanna, over you, please.
Great. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I'm going to talk about the trend of declining inertia as a consequence of decarbonisation and why it's relevant for all of us here today. Next slide, please. So what is inertia? It is rotational kinetic energy provided by any spinning mass on transmission or distribution grids. This can be steam or gas turbines, synchronous motors and pumps, and connected at transmission or distribution level. So a trend that we're seeing on decarbonising grids around the world is as fossil generators are replaced by non-synchronous generators like wind and solar, the overall inertia of that grid declines. So why is that relevant for us? On the right-hand side, you can see a graph which is the output of modelling done by National Grid in the UK. And they wanted to answer the question, what happens to my system frequency if there's a trip of 500 megawatts under different inertia conditions? So the orange graph here shows you the frequency response at the highest inertia condition, and the blue graph, the blue line, shows you the frequency response at the lowest inertia condition. So in the blue graph, you can see when there's a trip on the system, the frequency falls the fastest. So you've got the steepest slope of the curve, you've got high rock-off. And in the tail of the blue graph, you can see the oscillatory behavior in the network as well. So what this graph tells us is that in the low carbon, low inertia grid, you get high rock-off conditions and you get some frequency instability. So you get instability in frequency and voltage. Next slide, please. So how do you manage a grid that has these kinds of characteristics? So we see system operators taking some interventions to manage the security of the grid. One of the key actions they can take is to curtail renewables in favor of thermal plant. So this has the direct benefit of increasing the inertia on the network and increasing the stability of the network. But it obviously comes at a cost. It comes at a monetary cost. It comes at the cost of adding more carbon back into the network, and it's reducing access to the network for renewable generators. At the same time as system operators need to be responding to this challenge on inertia, their visibility of inertia is decreasing. And this is because they are relying on models of their network to estimate inertia, and their models are being undermined by fundamental changes in the network. So for example, as more assets connect to the distribution network or behind the meter, it's much more difficult for the system operator sitting at the transmission level to be able to see through to the distribution level and understand what's actually happening. So just as they need more, a better understanding of what's happening in terms of inertia, their visibility is decreasing. This is driving error in their models, and it's making their decision-making more difficult. How they respond to this is to add contingency into their planning. This results in more curtailment for renewables, and it results in overspending for consumers. At Reactive Technologies, we've developed a method of measuring inertia directly for the first time. And we hope that this data can allow system operators to have a better understanding in real time of what's happening on their grids when it comes to inertia and system stability. This should allow them to reduce that contingency and to increase access back to renewable generators and drive out cost. Another trend we're seeing in decarbonising markets around the world is a drive to establish inertia markets. So this might be where a system operator procures inertia directly from market participants. Again, we hope that by providing better data into system operators, these markets can be established so that the right amount of reserves are procured at the right time and in the right place. This will drive out inefficiencies in the market. The ultimate aim, of course, is to enable decarbonisation, improve access to the market for renewable generators, and to drive out cost for consumers. Next slide, please. I'm going to finish with a quote from one of our customers, who's National Grid system operator in the UK. So Fintan Sly is the director of the system operator in the UK. His quote here at the end, he says, "Inertia is at the heart of everything we do." It's at the heart of everything that we do at Reactive Technologies as well. And we believe it's going to become more and more of a hot topic as grids continue to decarbonise and head on that path towards net zero. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanna, for a very insightful presentation. And the next one is flotation energy, again with Tim Sawyer on the opportunity for Taiwan. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Hoop. Much appreciated. Thank you also to Bureau of Energy of the MOEA and British Office and UK Department of International Trade for organising this and giving us the opportunity. I have to recognise Reggie, who is in the audience as well. So for those that are lucky enough to be present, he's there to talk to you. Just a few minutes to talk about flotation energy, the Kincardine project, and more specifically bring that back to Taiwan and what we're doing where we see the opportunity. Next slide, please. So flotation energy, a global leader in the development of floating offshore wind. We've developed some 3 gigawatts of bottom fixed offshore wind, and more recently, the founders of Flotation developed and conceived the Kincardine floating offshore wind project as well. We're pioneering the energy transition, that is transitioning to non-fossil fuels, but also helping the oil and gas industry to transition their businesses as well by introducing offshore wind. A lot of projects on the go. The latest of those was the 100 megawatt White Cross floating offshore wind project that was mentioned before, which was announced a few weeks ago, which is a very exciting test and demonstration project. Before that, 480 megawatts bottom fixed offshore wind farm as part of the Crown Estate Round 4 auction process with our joint venture partner, Cobra. And we're also working on the Sinchu floating wind demonstration and commercial project, which I'll come back to later. Our headquarters are in Scotland, in the UK, with subsidiaries in Taiwan, Australia and Japan, and we're very committed to commercialising floating wind and developing commercial projects in Taiwan, hence that subsidiary and our activities. Next slide, please. I thought you'd be more interested in the Kincardine project, so I put a slide in to show you where it is and a video that's playing in the background. This was drone footage taken a few weeks ago of the very last 9.5 megawatt floating turbine leaving port and heading to site off the coast of Aberdeen. It gives you an impression of scale. I'm a scientist by background, and I find the engineering absolutely phenomenal. The scale of it, the fact you can float these structures, but also there's now 5 of them installed as the world's largest floating wind project. It's now in the pre-commercial phase and heading towards commercial. And our desire is, as a company, to bring the knowledge and experience and lessons learned from Kincardine into Taiwan. And I'd love to say that that photo is taken off Taiwan for a future demonstration project, and let's hope that's so. That's 15 kilometres offshore in 60 to 80 metres of water. As I said, there's 5 of these machines now installed, grid connected and operating. And there's also the original 2 megawatt machine, the little baby machine, which was first in 2018. So a truly astounding project, and one we can use all that knowledge and experience of how to do it the next time. And in some cases, how to do it better, perhaps, as well. Next slide, please. So we've been active in Taiwan for some time now. Nicole, Steve and I have been to Taiwan many times. Reggie Wu is our general manager and director in Taiwan, there to build a local developer for floating offshore wind. We looked at the opportunity in Taiwan for floating. We saw there was a very large opportunity there. As Director Chen mentioned earlier, there's maybe 10 gigawatts in less than 50 meters of water, at least 10 gigawatts or more for floating. And we see that as a very important part of achieving Taiwan's offshore wind targets and its renewable energy targets more broadly. We looked at those potential sites and selected Hsinchu for lots of reasons. It has a good wind resource, it's the right depth, distance offshore, strong grid connection, strong port infrastructure and supply chain nearby, many other factors that make it suitable. We've started surveys some time ago now and the EIA process. And what we're looking to do is a 100 megawatt test and demonstration project building on Kincardine and the other projects in the UK, bringing all that experience to Taiwan to develop locally. There's a lot of work ongoing and we are constantly exploring opportunities to work with local supply chain. Development is a domestic business. It's not one we can do from afar. And also one where we want to work with partners, local partners in Taiwan. So if you're interested in floating wind, if you're interested in this project and others, please let me know. And you can see there the map of where we're looking. There's a lot more detail behind that in terms of the design elements and the engineering and the approvals, etc. And I'll be happy to provide more information down the track. Next slide, please. There's some context there. If you wish to get a hold of us, I'll be more than happy to speak with you. We see Taiwan as a leading offshore wind market in the Asia Pacific region and very well placed to extend its emerging supply chain, its emerging industry into floating, that then creates a bigger domestic market, bigger domestic opportunity, and indeed export opportunities as well. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Huub.
Good. And thank you, Tim. Next speaker then is Tom Manning from Seawind, Taiwan. And I believe you're in the audience there, aren't you, Tom?
I am. Can everybody hear me okay? Good. Thank you, yes. BOE and British Office for the invitation to speak today. Seawind Taiwan is known in Taiwan today as one of the kind of leading local supply chain companies providing CTVs and O&M solutions, including for the Swancore's Formosa 1 project, which Mr. Lin talked about earlier. But I want to talk today about looking further ahead at floating offshore wind and the specific requirements for installing cables for floating turbines. So next slide, please. So Seawind Taiwan are a joint venture that have been set up here for the last 3 years, but we are part of a larger group called the Global Marine Group, and one of our business units back in the UK, headquartered in Aberdeen, is Global Offshore. And I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about what their unique capabilities in cable installation and trenching offer for floating wind, and give you a case study of a recent installation. Next slide, please. So one of the things that is really important to understand from a cable point of view with floating offshore wind is although the cables are importantly very different when it comes to floating, the technology used to install and bury those cables, and indeed to maintain them, is the same that's required for fixed bottom wind farms and cables that are fully buried under the seabed. And within our group, we have a number of cable ships equipped to install those power cables, and a variety of tools, burial tools, that we use to bury the portions of the cables which aren't dynamic, are actually buried under the seabed. Two I want to highlight on the screen here is the Q1400, which is a multi-purpose trenching vehicle which can be used to bury cables within both soft and hard ground. It has a jetting capability as well as a rock cutting capability. And the Prelay Plough 240, which was uniquely developed a couple of years ago by Global Offshore to look at simultaneous burial and boulder clearance within wind farms to drastically reduce the amount of time spent burying cables. We've actually used that on the Kincardine project of Flotation Energy to install their array cables, and I'll talk more about that project shortly. Next slide, please. One of the main challenges for subsea cable installation contractors for floating offshore wind is the installation of the dynamic component of the cable and managing what we call the catenary of the cable within the water column connecting it, the floating structure, to the seabed. There's a number of things that make that more complicated with floating wind: the tendency to place these turbines in deeper water depths, managing the ongoing influence of the currents on the cables, not just during laying of the cable to the seabed, but making sure that impact of those currents to the cable during the operational phase is considered during the installation. Making sure that the mooring chains of the structures themselves have no interference within the cable installation process, but also don't impact future potential repair requirements of those cables. And also the difference in accessing floating structures versus fixed foundations. So a lot of focus goes into the cable design and how the catenary is going to be managed with different flotation sections during the segment that's in the water column. We equally have to put emphasis on how we handle and install those cables on the deck of the vessel to make sure the relevant flotation and buoyant sections are employed at the right place on the cable to manage the catenary, and to adjust our pull-in methodology on the floating foundations to account that we have in some places, buoyant cable rather than a negatively buoyant cable, as you have with fixed bottom turbines. Next slide, please. So a lot of focus for us as a cable installation company goes into the initial design analysis for the floating cable catenary. We look at how we can engineer and manufacture buoyancy modules and sections to stiffen the cable at the relative points to make sure that that cable is protected, particularly from excessive wear at the point that it connects to the seabed and to the structure. And we develop unique installation methodology and procedures to make sure that those flotation sections are employed at the right place and that we don't put undue stress or tension on the dynamic cable as it's pulled into the floating structure. Next slide, please. As well as the cable installation, there's a lot that goes alongside that project for floating wind that we've already developed here in Taiwan as Seawind Taiwan. We've been delivering cable route clearance operations for 2 of the wind farms so far here in Taiwan with Taiwanese flagged vessels and our own crew and surveyors here in country. We're developing a pool of technicians to deliver the cable pull-in required on the floating turbine foundations as well as the fixed bottom, full pre-rigging, pull-in and de-rigging technician teams. And we also have a partner here in country who does high voltage termination and testing services that have been working with us on the high voltage maintenance scope on Formosa 1, but also have the capability to terminate and to joint power cables for the termination during the installation phase. Next slide, please. I want to finish by looking at the Kincardine project, both the initial phase in 2018 and, as Tim just highlighted, 2021's successful installation of 5 larger turbines. The cable installation was delivered by Global Offshore. A combination of vessels, the Global Symphony and the Maersk Connector, did the installation for those both periods. A lot of focus for us on the cable protection, both at the nearshore end where we installed rock bags and split pipe, and then used the Q1400 jet trencher, which I introduced earlier in the presentation, to trench the cables out to the wind farm. At the point where the cable is installed and becomes dynamic cable up to the foundation, we use touchdown monitoring using a work class ROV. And at various points during that dynamic riser's journey from the seabed to the floating foundation, we installed the Euroduct and the flotation sections to make sure that the buoyancy modules kept the cable in the right position for us to pull it into the floating structure. Next slide, please. So if anybody would like to come and talk to me about what Global Offshore could potentially offer floating wind installation requirements here in Taiwan, you're more than welcome to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. And Mr. Yu, over to you, please.
Okay, the next one is the last presentation of today's meeting. I would like to invite Mr. Cheng Sun, the country manager of Cheng-Wei. Mr. Sun, the floor is yours.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good day all.
Thank you, Mr. Yu.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sure, that's good. All right, thank you all, and also the UK office for inviting. It's really an honor to speak with so many professionals here today, and also fellow contractors for Kincardine and a developer as well. My name is Alvin. I've been in Taiwan for the last 3 years, working for Boskalis for 11 years, and spending the better of my time in offshore wind, previously in the oil and gas sector for floating TNI. Next, please. All right, so together with our Dutch partner, we have installed several offshore wind farms in UK, fixed and floating, and also across the entire life cycle from survey to foundations to cables and also decommissioning as well. So combining our local partners' marine construction capabilities here, Huachi Offshore, together we have executed a few work here in Taiwan. So just want to say something about our collaboration with the universities. We have been we have signed MOU with these 5 universities and busy with knowledge transfer, recruitments, and internships opportunities with them. So I just want to specifically mention for floating wind, we also have a partnership with NCKU, Cheng Kung University, where we work very closely with the master student to develop dynamic response on a floating wind turbine using a shed anchor. And we have many people in town, in Taiwan, and on our vessels as well. Yeah, sorry, next please. One more slide, please. Thank you. One more slide. Yep. So these are the first 4 cadets that we sent abroad on the Bokalip one on the 14-month cadetship. So we have kept up with them, and these are the photos that they have shown to us. So they are currently on board the Bokalip one. Next, please. So due to limited time, I'll quickly browse through some of the projects we have here in Taiwan, mainly fixed. Next, please. So for WPD, we are involved in the geotechnical survey, drilling 49 holes of CPT. Next, please. For Formosa 1, we transport the CJEX Joratan to Taiwan to install the turbines. Next, please. So together with our local partner, Huachi Offshore, we procure the rocks from quarry and also arrange for all the storage activities here in Anping Port. Next, please. And their vessel, Huawei, has also been chartered into the project for a period of time. And we also contracted 2 Boscalis big hopper dredger to participate in this seabed leveling job. Next, please. And for Greater Changhua, we are involved in the construction support work and also responsible for the transporting of jackets from Korea to Taiwan in the coming months. Next, please. And also for the offshore substation, we are responsible for the lifting and the transport of the offshore substation into Taiwan using the Mighty 7-3 and Asian Hercules crane vessel. Next, please. And Boscalis is, Huawei is also responsible for the full T&I of the 62 sets of pin piles and jackets. So both the Bokalip 1, Bokalip 2, and also the Tiamat are involved in this construction work. Next, please. And likewise, next year we'll be involved in Formosa 2 jacket installation. So quite some, next please. So quite some work here we have done here in Taiwan. And of course, the assets and vessels that we use for fixed is very different from floating. So we are one of the very few main contractors to be involved in both. And we own quite a couple of modern, next please. So we own quite a number of modern, sophisticated bollard pools vessel, high bollard pool, between 200 to 400 tons bollard pool. And because of that, we are naturally involved in the first few offshore wind projects, floating offshore wind farm projects in the world. Next, please. So the first 2 floating wind farm projects, the High Wind Scotland and the Windfloat Atlantics. So they are the demonstration pre-commercial projects, and we are involved in the transportation, dry and wet tow, the roll-on operation, the float-off, and also the station keeping operations. So the High Wind Scotland is based in UK. Next, please. And it was mentioned many times just now by Tim and Tom. So I wouldn't say more, but we are the floaters T&I contractor. So making the pre-laying of the mooring system, dry towing of the floater, wet towing of the full assembled structure, and to the final hookup and the decommissioning of the demonstrator for the Kincardine project. So making use of 15 highly specialized vessels in the whole process. Next, please. So a bit about what we have learned. We want to make use of this information that we have learned from the previous project, and we put up this 7 circles, and I'll just quickly go through a few of them. So in terms of early engagement is very important, because to engage a T&I contractor, you're able to look into the installation consideration very early in the game, looking into the soil and the environmental conditions, and also how to best optimize the mooring conditions. Next, please. And for the anchors and mooring and prelay, of course, Boscalis is involved in a lot of the oil and gas projects around the world. So from drag anchors to suction-driven piles. So choosing anchors is a topic of its own, but I will just mention a bit about the logistic, because can you imagine if there's 1 kilometer of a chain for each catenary line, the logistic base is a key to make sure that of the good mobilization of the prelay mooring. Next, please. And for the tow...
Sorry to interrupt, you have about 1 minute left. Thank you.
We do. And towing is also very important. So you have to look into all the logistics and into also the aviation authority to ensure the installation of the integration of the turbine in the port. Next, please. And hookups are also quite crucial because many times you need to work with. There's a situation with breaking mooring lines, sinking of floaters. So working with a very experienced tow master is very important. And using a compensated gangway, like what I've shown in the photo here, is also key to make sure that the people transfer is quite easy during the bad weather season. Next, please. So Tom has talked about cables. So I don't want to mention anything more, but installing cable is something that Buscala has done a lot. But of course, installing dynamic cables is a different thing altogether. So I just want to say that. And lastly, if I go to the next slide, please, I would just say that O&M shouldn't be neglected, and we should be focusing on the early stage involvement from the installation contractors, and also using the right asset and making use of the lessons learned that we have learned so far from the European projects, and hopefully we can make it suitable floating wind feature in Taiwan. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sun, sharing your experience. And now we have 10 minutes. 10 minutes for Q&A. Okay. Please,
yes.
Anyone? Okay.
We will now open the floor for questions and answers. Any questions or any comments, please feel free to let us know. Any questions from the floor or from online? Here we do have collected a few questions. So the first question is that Thai Power Company, or TPC, plays a crucial role in grid transformation. What are the key steps that TPC should take in order to enable such grid transformation? So Mr. Yo, would you like to maybe direct the questions to a specific speaker?
So, Mr. Dai, can you give some response?
Okay. I think for the TPC to keep the grid stable for this energy transformation, I think currently we think the energy storage is quite important to balance in the renewable energy and also the conventional power plant. Especially when we increase a lot renewable energy from the wind turbine, I think we also face a lot of inertial loss and also the fluctuation quickly drop and up and down. So that's one of the system we think could help the Taiwan to go for smoothly the transformation. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I'm seeing that Joanna Doyle wants to come in on the question as well.
Yeah, just on the topic of grid stability, I think there are quite a few different ways to solve the problem of grid stability and declining inertia and how frequency and voltage are going to behave in the future. For Thai Power, I mean, I would recommend, obviously keeping dialogue open with other grids who are moving through the journey and starting to adopt some of the measures that they may need to adopt in future, like setting up an inertia market or procuring synthetic inertia from different assets, looking at grid forming inverters, and then, of course, storage assets for providing frequency response and balancing solutions. So there are a few different ways to skin the cat, and I think quite a bit of planning at this stage would be really worthwhile before picking a course, because there are different ways to get there, and learning the lessons from other grids would be a really valuable place to start.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions from online? from the room.
Here we have another question.
Yes, we have a question from the floor.
I'm very interested in the foundation model and forecasting. I'm wondering whether you, in the model, you have any parameter about earthquake and typhoon because it causes a sudden jerk on the foundations.
Yes, does anyone wish to come in? I'm looking at the screen, so raise your hand if you wish to come in. Yes, please, Tim.
I'll give a short answer to that. Typhoons and earthquakes are clearly an issue that need to be factored very early into design. With floating wind, you could argue that seismic impacts are less on a floating foundation, but they're no less important in that we need to be able to look at how the seabed moves, whether there's liquefaction and other issues, and that extends all the way through to cables running to shore across soft seabed and up over the shoreline. So it's certainly something that has been modelled and is being modelled into how we're designing projects, and something I believe we can find a solution for. Perhaps Peter Thompson from Arup, I know he has some thoughts on this as well.
Can you see me? Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. Okay, now I was just going to sort of reiterate what Tim was saying there. Obviously, seismic is one of the key design cases in places like Taiwan and Japan. It is something we do consider, but the main, you mentioned this sort of jerk reaction on the foundation. I mean, the idea of when you design foundations is to make sure that the period of motion of the foundation is different from the motions that you can expect from the seismic action, and thereby you can reduce the loading on the foundations in that way. But even so, you still need to build sort of more robustness into the design to cater for these sort of effects.
Thank you both. I hope that answers the question. Do we have the next question, please?
Yes, we do have a question from the floor.
Yeah, I have a question specifically for Mr. Tim Sawyer from Flotation Energy. Can you share some information with us regarding the cost of floating type wind farm, especially on the trend of the cost? When do you expect the cost to be reduced to the level of a fixed type wind farm? Just give us perhaps a rough estimation. Thank you.
You're on mute, Tim.
Thank you for the question. I will learn to unmute one day. Thank you for the question. It's an important one. There's 112 megawatts of floating wind installed today. 50 megawatts of that has just been commissioned with Kincardine. There's somewhere around 30,000 megawatts of bottom fixed. So bottom fixed has maybe 25, 30 years of development and a lot of scale to get the cost down. Floating is probably around 2 to 3 times that for demonstration projects of bottom fixed, and is projected to come rapidly down that cost curve because we can pick up a lot of the lessons from bottom fixed because the development technology has accelerated, including with projects such as Kincardine, and there is a very strong pull for floating to be able to go into deeper waters. So I think those combined will see the cost come down very rapidly. Will they ever be less than bottom fixed? I think it depends how you compare them, to be quite honest, and it remains to be seen.
Yeah. If I can also add, there are large areas of seabed resource where fixed bottom wind will be prohibitively expensive because it is too deep, and yet we need the power. what you may find interesting is the ORE Catapult in the UK have a joint collaboration with ITRI, and ORE Catapult have done a cost study into floating offshore wind, including at where is the cost in the various elements of the supply chain, and and Catapult also run in the UK the Floating Wind Centre of Excellence. So you may find if you go to that website or speak with the relevant people in ITRI that they can help you access that information.
Good answer, Hu.
If I can add further, because we have been involved in Windfloat Atlantic and also Kincardine, both are principal power floaters, and we can already see optimization in terms of the size and the weight of the floaters from initially 5,000 to 4,000 tons per floater. So you can see that there's already a 20% reduction in cost in terms of steel. And also different anchor system is also very different as well in terms of cost, and how to install these anchors in an efficient way can also reduce the cost significantly as well. But in general, anything from what I know, 55 meters is the limit where if you cross the 55 meters water depth, then usually more often than not, the floating fixed bottom will be a lot more expensive. So then floating solution will be the way to go going forward.
All right, thank you very much. Due to time constraints, I'm afraid we will have to close this session here. And thank you to all presenters for this very informative session. And thank you to our two co-chairs, Mr. Deroyan and Mr. Yeo, for chairing the session today. Before we conclude today's meeting, we would like to invite our two co-chairs to please deliver your closing remarks to close the session. We would first like to invite Mr. Huub Deroyan. Mr. Deroyan, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. All I would say is this has been a high-frequency exchange of views. I really look forward to continuing the growth of our energy systems in the UK and in Taiwan as we move towards a decarbonized and healthy environmental future. And I hope that we may strengthen the bonds that bind us, and look forward to doing so over a in-person event at some point in time in the future, and I hope the business may thrive. And thank you for Bureau of Energy and to the British office for organizing the particular event.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deroyan, for your remarks. And next, please welcome Mr. Yeo.
Okay, Director Huub, Stephanie, and ladies and gentlemen, today's meeting is coming to an end. On behalf of the Bureau of Energy, I would like to thank all of you for joining the 16th UK-Taiwan Renewable Energy Roundtable meeting. I would like also to thank Director Huub, the British office in Taiwan, and my BOE colleague for organizing this meeting, and also to Director Chen from Taipei Representative Office in the UK, and to all speakers and experts for sharing your knowledge and experiences. At this meeting, I'm very happy to witness the MOU signing between Flotation Energy and the CSBC cooperation in Taiwan. The two companies will have close technical cooperation and exchange. And we also look forward to seeing more Taiwanese and British companies establish cooperation in the field of renewable energy in the future. Today's topics, including the current status and the future planning of the offshore wind power development in the UK and Taiwan, and cooperation in offshore wind power O&M industrial, smart grid, and floating offshore wind power. Government and the industrial representatives from both sides have put forward very insightful ideas and knowledge exchange. The briefing and the discussion has benefited me a lot, and I believe everyone who attended this meeting also a lot of gains. In the development of renewable energy, the UK has always been an important partner for Taiwan in achieving the energy transition goals. According to report in 2020, the UK's renewable energy has surpassed the fossil fuel power generation for the first time and became the country's main source of electricity, mainly due to the stable development of the offshore wind power industry. Taiwan is also committed to the development of offshore wind to increase the share of renewable energy. I believe there is a lot to learn from the UK and work together toward the goal of net zero carbon emissions. Although this year's conference is still affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm still very happy with everyone's participation, and we completed this conference. Finally, I do hope to meet my friends in the UK in person soon. Thank you all again for taking the time to attend this meeting. I wish you all the best and the good health. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yo, for your remarks and for chairing the meeting for us today. And thank you all very much for your participation. We look forward to more fruitful collaboration in the renewable energy sector between Taiwan and the UK. Before we officially close the meeting, Karen from the British office would like to make an announcement. Karen, over to you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for the co-chair, both co-chair, and as Hoop mentioned at the very beginning, for today, all the presentations that our speakers given will be shared to all the audience online today, as well as the presenter and the home team. So we will have a link to share with you all afterwards, and because we also will audit some Mandarin translation afterwards to the video. So we will share that video with you, but bear with us, we might need a week of working time, but it will definitely be shared, the link to you, so all the audience can get a copy of it. And also we have produced an e-booklet, which is includes all the UK supply chain companies that are actively working in the Taiwan offshore wind market. So we will have this O&M UK supply chain booklet, e-booklet, available for you as well, which we will send out to you after this event. So thank you so much today, and thank you for the Taiwan co-chair, DJU, and thank you for the UK co-chair, Mr. Hoop de Rohan.
Thank you, Karen. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the 16th UK-Taiwan Renewable Energy Roundtable meeting. Once again, thank you very much for your input and for your participation. We wish you all great health and prosperity, and we hope to see you in person in the next UK-Taiwan Roundtable meeting. Thank you very much for your participation. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, all online friends.
Bye.
Thank you.
Excellent, Cherry. Right on time. Very